He is a highly intelligent prison escapee, once successful in escaping twice. He has become a wanted fugitive in multiple countries. Even though Michael has escaped from prison, the death of his girlfriend Sarah haunts him like a rivet fixed in his heart, keeping him awake at night. He has been tracking the murderer for 3 weeks. And today, it all comes to an end. Michael picks up the everlasting origami flower on the table, signifying the official start of his revenge plan. He observes Mahone opening his car door as James and Gretchen, dressed formally, enter the hotel. Michael follows suit, disguising himself as a service staff to blend in, then changes into a suit in a secluded corner and takes out his weapon to begin his action. At this moment, James enters a presidential suite alone and takes out $50 million to purchase a memory card. But the moment he secures the memory card, James pulls out a gun and eliminates them. He quickly goes to a storage room, retrieves a machine from the ceiling, and begins to copy the information on the memory card. However, just as James is about to finish, Michael catches up to him, gun in hand, demanding to know where Gretchen is. James hides the memory card behind his back and quietly switches it with his hand.
Get her in here, now.
You have to trust me. I'm not your enemy, Michael.
James?
We need to leave.
You know, despite everything, if Sarah could weigh in right now, she'd tell me not to kill you. That's the kind of person she was. This is for Sarah.
I never killed Sarah.
I wouldn't expect.
In a moment of desperation, Gretchen reveals shocking news. She claims she did not kill Sarah. Sarah had escaped from the dark room where she was held, to threaten Michael into planning a full-fledged prison break. She had faked Sarah's death. Michael can hardly believe his ears, yet he desperately hopes it's true. As Michael is distracted, James takes the opportunity to draw his gun on him.
Give me the gun.
She's lying.
Is she? If you pull that trigger, you'll never know.
Just then, the sound of police sirens outside rises. The bodies of the 2 men James just killed have been discovered. Stuck here, they would all be caught, so Michael has no choice but to lower his weapon. As he leaves, James discreetly takes a newspaper from the table and hides the fake memory card inside it, placing it in a planter. Moments later, a white-haired liaison from the company retrieves it. Soon after, Gretchen meets General Krantz in the desert. To Krantz's fury, the memory card James submitted turns out to be blank, although Gretchen insists James must have tampered with it. The fact that she went to great lengths to get James out of prison makes Krantz suspect they are in collusion.
You know what to do.
They were from a slush fund from Cobra 2. It's yours. No, please, please.
Elsewhere, Michael calls his brother Lincoln to confirm if he saw Sarah's head in the box. Lincoln affirms, but since the basement was dark, he didn't inspect the head to confirm if it was Sarah. This reignites Michael's hope. He starts checking his voicemail for any message from Sarah. Unexpectedly, there's a message suggesting Sarah is alive and wants to meet him. Michael rushes to the meeting place, only to find the former senior agent Mahone waiting for him. Mahone gets straight to the point, saying he and James are working together against the company, and Gretchen was merely being used, likely already eliminated. The memory card, known as Scylla, contains the names and operational plans of all the company's agents. Securing it would enable them to completely destroy the company. Otherwise, they will all be relentlessly hunted down. But Michael's only concern is Sarah's whereabouts. Only when Mahone suggests James might know where Sarah is does Michael agree to meet James. In a secluded spot, James reappears, holding the memory card, stating, "Only by accessing Scylla's data can we bring down the company, and only then can all of us truly gain our freedom." The problem is that accessing Scylla's data requires breaking into a heavily guarded facility. Given Michael's history of successful prison breaks, they believe he can lead this mission, which is why they've approached him for an alliance. The bird guide left in Sona prison contained information that could have made the break-in easier, but it's now in Teabag's possession. Even without it, with their combined efforts, they are confident in their success. Sarah is indeed alive, hiding somewhere in Chicago, but she is in grave danger as the company is aggressively eliminating anyone aware of the secret. Before he can finish, a bullet strikes James in the head. Unexpectedly, James dies just like that. After their escape, the company's most formidable assassin, Wyatt, steps forward, takes Scylla from James's body, and coolly walks away. Wyatt hands Scylla over to the general for verification. Relieved it's authentic, he orders Wyatt to kill everyone aware of Scylla's secret.
It's time to clean up now. Thoroughly.
everyone who was close to Whistler. Schofield, Mahone, Burroughs.
A truck full of stowaways slowly approaches the Mexican border. The driver opens the cargo area, which is packed tightly with over 50 people. Unbelievably, Bellick and Sucre emerge from inside. But how could they, who were clearly in Panama's Sona prison, appear here? It turns out that just 3 days ago, a riot broke out in Sona prison. The prison was burned to ashes by the inmates, and 90% of the prisoners were shot on the spot by the guards. They, along with Teabag, were just the ones who managed to escape. Bellick had already contacted his mother to pick him up here. Indeed, even if you are a fugitive, a mother is always the most trustworthy person. Sucre rushes to the hospital first thing. Today is the day his girlfriend Maricruz is giving birth. Maricruz's sister brings the newborn baby, and as Sucre is immersed in happiness, the sister quietly signals someone across the room. Turns out, fearing Sucre would drag Maricruz down, she had already informed the police ahead of time. Sucre is furious but carefully hands his daughter over to her, then hurriedly escapes through the fire escape. Bellick, waiting below, is dumbfounded by the scene, but before they can start the car, they are surrounded by a swarm of police. The poor duo were caught again, not even an hour after their escape. Compared to them, Teabag, who also escaped from the same prison, is living the good life. With Mary's help, Teabag gets his hands on all of Lechero's savings, spending his days dressed like an executive, but he is not satisfied with such a comfortable life. As he can never forget the countless times Michael left him for dead, he takes out a stack of dollars, bidding farewell to the only woman in the world who appreciated him. Under the arrangement of his assistant Sancho, they board a black car headed for the United States, planning to seek revenge on Michael. While Sancho goes to use the bathroom, Teabag boasts about his intelligence and leadership skills.
1 in a million top charisma, yes. I'm just gonna look down his nose at me.
How you gonna find him?
This,
You're both into birds?
no. It's either gonna take me to him or he to me. I just know it.
But the two drivers are indifferent to his boasts. What they care about is the cash in Teabag's bag. One of the drivers quietly picks up a crowbar hidden under the seat. The scene shifts, and Teabag and Sancho are lying in a desert about 60 kilometers from the US border. The drivers rob them of all their money and food, leaving behind only the useless bird guide. Without food and water, how will they cross this desolate desert? On the other side, the company's top assassin, Wyatt, has already begun his mission, which is to eliminate Mahone as well as Michael and Lincoln. When Wyatt arrives at Mahone's ex-wife Pam's house and gets no useful information, he brutally murders Mahone's entire family. Upon hearing the news, Mahone rushes over, disregarding his status as a wanted criminal, wanting to rush into the house to see the condition of his wife and child, but is stopped by the police. The police tell Mahone that if he goes in now, he will regret it for the rest of his life, hinting at the dire situation inside. In the third season, the biggest winner has to be Lincoln, who not only remains unharmed with his son but also gains a new girlfriend. Unfortunately, the good times do not last long, as Lincoln vaguely feels that he is being targeted by the company. Just as he is leaving with Sophia and L.J., they are ambushed by the company's assassin. Although Lincoln kills the company's agent, the loud gunfire attracts nearby patrolling police, and he is eventually arrested by the local authorities. On the other hand, Michael is still looking for Sarah and makes a call to Bruce, a friend of Sarah's father. Unfortunately, just as the call connects, a group of police surrounds Michael.
Hands on your head.
Michael is taken to an interrogation room, where he meets with Don, a senior agent from Homeland Security. Don gets straight to the point, saying he has been secretly investigating Scylla for years, and James was his undercover agent in the company. Now that James has been killed, he hopes Michael will agree to join the search for Scylla, promising freedom upon success. Though the offer is tempting, Michael states he will discuss nothing unless they help him find Sarah. Don hesitates, as finding Sarah would require signatures from leaders of 20 different departments, and if any of them are affiliated with the company, Sarah's life could be at risk. But Don offers another tempting condition. Your brother Lincoln has been taken by the Panamanian police, and we can extradite him back to the US at any time if you agree.
I think I'd like to talk to my brother.
You working those arrangements?
Seeing the efficiency and power of Homeland Security, Michael begins to be swayed. However, Don also states that for their safety, only a few people in the government know about this operation, and he would be their direct contact. After obtaining Scylla, you would then infiltrate the heavily guarded company headquarters to decrypt it. With your experience of escaping prison twice, I believe this wouldn't be a difficult task for you. As Michael hesitates on whether to join, someone posts a hefty bail for the brothers, and they are released. Turns out, this person is Bruce, a friend of Sarah's father. Bruce takes Michael to a house, opens the door, and standing opposite is the long-yearned for Sarah. After many days, they embrace tightly. That night, they spend the entire time together, and Michael gives the origami flower to Sarah. Seeing the scars inflicted on Sarah's back fills Michael with pain and guilt. Suddenly, a bullet flies in. It's the company's assassin, Wyatt, who has arrived. They quickly find a safe place to hide. Michael finally understands that unless the company is brought down, they will never have peace. The next morning, Michael meets his former prison escape companions, all part of his conditions to join the Scylla project. He didn't expect Don to actually bring them all here.
Can't tell you how grateful I am for including me.
Well, Sucre vouched for you, Bellic. He said you came through for him down in Panama. Alex,
Michael?
you ready for this?
Yeah. I am.
Soon after, Don prepares new identities for Michael and the others, but Michael knows some things can't be faked. To better conceal himself, without using painkillers, Michael endures severe pain to remove all his tattoos. A new journey has begun, but they are unaware that they have already been drawn into a much larger conspiracy. You can never imagine how ugly human nature can become in the face of life and death. This is their third day trapped in the desolate desert, without food and water. Even taking a step becomes an arduous task for them. Teabag, while tearing pages from a book to stave off hunger, encourages Sancho not to give up hope of surviving, but unexpectedly, taking advantage of Teabag resting, Sancho strikes him with a stick.
Hell you doing? I'm hungry, Teddy. Why should the both of us die out here when one of us can help the other one survive? You don't want to do this, please. I'll make it quick.
It turned out that Sancho wanted to eat Teabag's hunger, but unfortunately, the starving and dizzy Sancho was only gently pushed by Teabag and crashed to death on the rock. Looking at Sancho's body, Teabag is filled with immense sorrow. However, at this moment, an evil thought also flashes through his mind. Teabag shakes his head trying to calm himself, but in the next second, there's a bonfire burning on the ground, and he drags Sancho's body towards the fire with all his might. Even though he has killed countless people before, this is the first time he feels the ugliness in his heart. 3 days pass, and although he has the strength to keep going, Teabag can't help but retch when he thinks back. Fortunately, luck is on their side as he hears the sound of a motor from behind a dune. It turns out to be two young men passing by on off-road bikes. Seeing Teabag's miserable state, the young men offer him a ride.
Hell, we can give you a ride if you'd like. Hey, what's wrong, man? Eat some bad Mexican?
Something like that.
With the help of the two young men, Teabag finally made it back to San Diego, USA. He comes to this city because the bird guide marked a special set of numbers, seemingly hiding something important by James here. Following the guide's instructions, Teabag successfully finds a shared storage locker, inputs the password, and discovers various IDs, bank cards, and documents inside. Obviously, this is another identity of James. Teabag learns from the newspaper that James has been murdered and decides to assume this new identity without hesitation. According to the information, Teabag boarded a bus to Los Angeles and searched for the address on the nameplate and used the key to open a room. Looking at the luxurious furnishings inside the room, Teabag can't contain his ecstasy. From now on, he can live undiscovered, no longer needing to flee. While shaving, Teabag recalls the times Michael tricked him, leading to the loss of his left hand and a series of tragic events that followed. Now it's time for his revenge. However, what he doesn't know is that Michael and the others have also arrived in Los Angeles. The escape team reunites, aiming to obtain Scylla to completely break the company and secure a peaceful life for their latter years. They arrive at an abandoned warehouse, well stocked with supplies. Don also equips them with a new team member, the top hacker Roland. Roland is officially there to assist Michael and others in decrypting Scylla's secrets, but is actually Don's insider among them. Without delay, the operation officially begins. Mahone shares his intelligence first. He was once the personal driver for James and Gretchen and overheard some clues. It turns out the company stored Scylla with a high-ranking executive, the so-called cardholder. He had once seen the cardholder's driver and could identify him from a photo, which would lead them to the cardholder. But with 10 million people in Los Angeles, finding this driver is like finding a needle in a haystack. Mahone, truly deserving of his reputation as a former top FBI agent, captivates everyone with his subsequent deduction.
His suit. You don't buy a suit like that on a cop's salary or pulling weekend gigs as a driver. That means he's full-time, he's highly paid. You ask our friend Mr. Self to run tax records of 45 to 55-year-old white males in Los Angeles, drawing a military pension and taking 6 figures from a private security company. And you narrow your field from 10 million till about 50, and then I can pick the guy out from there. Find the driver, you find the cardholder.
Through deduction, the scope was instantly narrowed from 10 million to 50 people. With information provided by Homeland Security, Mahone immediately recognizes the driver from these 50 people. Without a moment's delay, they stake out the driver's home and follow him to the cardholder's residence. It's a private villa resembling a castle, with motion sensors at the entrance, surrounded by alarm systems and armed guards, making it impossible for even a fly to get in, let alone sneak in to steal the card. Worse yet, Michael suddenly feels dizzy for no reason, and looking up into the mirror, he shockingly discovers black blood flowing from his nose. Never ever mooch off free Wi-Fi in public places, or you might not even realize what happened when the balance in your phone account gets swiped clean. This is the ultimate black tech created by the top hacker Roland. It looks like a smartphone, but in reality, it's a digital black hole. It can intercept all digital data from no more than 2 people, including the account information of those using public Wi-Fi and the pins of customers using credit cards at gas stations. Let's take a look at how the Revenge Squad used this receiver to successfully steal a priceless Scylla data card. After hours of stakeout, they finally saw the cardholder Stewart's car leaving the villa. Following closely, Sucre overtook on a bend and abruptly stopped in front of him.
Good luck.
Sucre took the receiver, then he got into a fiercely strong argument in Spanish. The driver was dumbfounded, having never in his life encountered someone so unreasonable yet so full of confidence. However, Roland didn't detect any signal from Scylla. Thinking it was not close enough, Sucre tried to get closer to Stewart inside the car, but the screen still showed no response.
Try to get closer to him.
If he was any closer, he'd be in the car.
I get you, little act, Pedro. Hit the brakes, let the rich guy pay for damage you don't intend to fix.
Just give the man some money so we can leave.
The first attempt ended in failure, but at least they got a crucial piece of information. Stewart didn't carry the data card on him but had hidden it at home. But Stewart's home was heavily guarded by security personnel. Not even a fly could get in, let alone sneak in to copy the data card. Just when things seemed at a deadlock again, Michael, who was staking out near the villa, noticed that besides Stewart, only a housekeeper could freely enter and exit the villa. But how could they make the housekeeper work for them? Michael came up with an idea. The next day, he had Sarah deliberately strike up a conversation with the housekeeper at the bus station. Sarah complimented the housekeeper's handbag, asking if she could feel its texture. The housekeeper, being very friendly, handed over her bag, not noticing a smartphone slipping out from Sarah's folded newspaper. When it was time for work and the housekeeper walked into Stewart's home, Michael immediately called her, not giving her a second to put down her backpack. Claiming to be a security company employee, he asked her to open the windows for a security system check, then directed her to walk around the house. The moment the housekeeper entered the study, Roland's signal instantly jumped to full bars, clearly indicating that Scylla was hidden in this room. Roland immediately started the data copying program, but the transfer would take 2 minutes, so Michael had to find a way to keep the housekeeper from leaving the room.
The source of our problem, if you could just stay at that particular window and hold it closed while we reset the system, that should do it.
Thanks to Michael's smooth talking, the Scylla data was finally copied. Now, all they had to do was to retrieve the receiver successfully. However, Lincoln noticed that for some reason, the housekeeper turned back before leaving the door. But fortunately, she came back out with the backpack after 15 seconds. Now it was Mahone's turn to step up, but he hesitated several times to snatch the bag and couldn't bring himself to do it. Bellick, unable to stand by and watch any longer, snatched the housekeeper's backpack and bolted.
Wait here. actually had to slow down not to catch you.
I think I pulled a groin.
Yet, after rummaging through the backpack again and again, they couldn't find the receiver. A reluctant Mahone had no choice but to return the bag. Back at the base, everyone looked as glum as frostbitten eggplants. Suddenly, Michael remembered that the housekeeper had turned back before leaving. This meant she likely discovered the device that resembled a smartphone and, thinking it belonged to her employer, put it back in the room.
Well, then guess what, fellas? It's game over.
You know how many months it took me to make that thing, Michael? What, you just think I could whip up another one in a couple of seconds?
Losing it is not the problem. If they find it, that's the problem.
They find out someone was after that card, we're done.
What do you mean done? What does that mean? Does it mean we're gonna go back to prison? Is they gonna kill us? What the hell is that?
They were back to square one, and this time, they had no way out. Even if it meant entering the dragon's den, they had to retrieve the receiver tonight. According to their investigation, the house's alarm would sound within 2 seconds of an illegal entry, and then 47 armed guards would immediately storm the house, making escape impossible. Michael re-examined the villa's architectural blueprints, mapping out each guard's position, trying to find even the slightest flaw. After constant deliberation, he finally thought of a daring plan. In the wee hours, the escape team split into 2 groups. Sucre and Lincoln broke into the villa opposite Stewart's, forcefully prying open the door. As soon as the alarm went off, Stewart's guards were immediately on alert, rushing to the door to check. Meanwhile, Stewart was awakened by the shrill alarm, thinking it was his own, so he quickly turned off his home's alarm system, while Mahone and Michael lurked nearby. Taking advantage of the moment Stewart turned off the security system, they slipped into the house and successfully took the receiver from the table. When Stewart went out to inquire, he learned it was the thief in the neighbor's house, but by the time he restarted the security system, Michael and Mahone had already quietly slipped out of the villa. Back at the base, everyone was incredibly excited. Having Scylla meant they were one step closer to true freedom, but their celebration was premature. When Roland decoded the receiver, he found that the data was a bunch of gibberish. After repeated analysis, they realized that this data card was just a small part of the entire Scylla data. It was like a piece of pizza, and what they got was just one slice. In other words, Scylla was divided into several parts, held by different people. Only by collecting all of them could they access the real Scylla data, take down the company, and achieve true freedom.
How many do you give it to?
Okay, that quote your father held on to? In the Odyssey, Scylla is a 6-headed monster that requires a sacrifice of 6 soldiers in order to pass.
So Scylla isn't 1 card. It's 6.
In the world, there exists an invisible prison far more terrifying than any physical one, and this group of people is deeply ensnared in such an intangible cage. To clear their names, for freedom, and to avenge their son, the escape crew reunites once again, all to bring down the omnipotent and mysterious organization the company and secure everlasting peace for themselves and their families. But to dismantle the company, they must obtain 6 Scylla data cards. Yet currently, they possess only 1, with the whereabouts of the remaining 5 completely unknown. Worse still, the team's linchpin, Michael, seems to have contracted a rare disease, casting a shadow over their path. Can they dismantle the company and break free from this cage? Michael finds Don and gives him a good scolding. We agreed on 1 card, but now it's turned into 6. Are you playing us for fools? Don was equally taken aback, never anticipating the complexity of the situation. Yet he stood firm. Our deal was Scylla for your freedom, whether it's 6 or 600 cards. If you can't get Scylla, you're going straight back to prison. Don also issued a dire ultimatum to Michael, to secure the remaining 5 cards within 5 days. Don was under duress himself, bearing the pressure from his NSA superior, Herb. Upon learning there were 6 Scylla cards, Herb realized this was nearly an impossible task. Any slip-up could expose them to the company's insiders within the government, leaving them clueless about their own demise, prompting Herb to abort this secret mission. Meanwhile, Michael and his folks were completely in the dark, still analyzing Stewart, trying to extract information about the other 5 cardholders from him. Fortunately, during their last operation, Roland's receiver not only copied a portion of Scylla but also accidentally duplicated several emails from Stewart's computer. The emails were about inviting Stewart to a meeting in London, scheduled for today at 4 p.m. Oddly, it's almost 4 p.m., and Stewart is still in Los Angeles with no record of him purchasing a flight ticket. With years of detective experience, Mahone suggested the email could be a cipher. Michael instantly connected the dots. taking the first letter of each word, which spelled out Scylla. It seems likely Stewart is meeting with the other Scylla holders today. In other words, this is an excellent opportunity to learn about the other card holders. But where exactly is the meeting place? The email also included an advertisement for a virility supplement and an invitation to an astronomy club, both seemingly unrelated to the meeting location. Using the invitation's celestial coordinates to calculate, the result pointed to the Antarctic state. Clearly impossible. Just as they were at a loss, Sucre and Bellic, who were monitoring Stewart outside, suddenly found themselves surrounded by federal agents.
Hands up, hands where I can
Oh my God, this ain't good.
I got him up, I got him up!
Put your hands up, Sucre. Come on, man. Who you calling? Put your hands up. They're gonna shoot weapon. Come on, put your hands up. Okay. Don't shoot. Don't shoot, man. We're all right.
Simultaneously, Roland's computer was locked down. Clearly, the NSA had begun to move. Fearing being implicated and not trusting a few fugitives to handle the situation, they decided to abort the mission and send them back to prison. Luckily, Michael received a text from Sucre in time, forcing the group to flee hastily. On the road, Michael tried to persuade Don to give him a bit more time, but this was a decision from Don's boss's boss, and he had no choice but to follow orders. Because Don had placed an ankle bracelet on everyone's feet before they went on the secret mission, Michael and his crew had no choice but to sneak into the underground tunnels to temporarily block the tracking signal from their anklets. But staying here was not a long-term plan. Michael was still trying to find clues in 2 emails. Suddenly, overlapping advertisements on the wall gave him an epiphany, making Michael realize that the 2 emails might need to be looked at together. He immediately took a nail from nearby, scratched the frame of the star chart, and placed it on an advertisement for male vitality.
New Beach.
There's a power plant in Newport Beach. That's your meeting.
We ain't get long until 4 o'clock. How the hell are we gonna get out of here?
How fast?
Without delay, they hijacked a taxi and rushed to the power station, while agents from the National Security Bureau relentlessly pursued them based on their location. As they neared the power station, to buy Michael more time, Lincoln, Mahone, and Sarah ran in different directions. Eventually, they were captured, and Michael took the opportunity to escape and head straight to the cardholders' meeting point. As expected, all 6 cardholders were present, and Michael quickly took out his phone to sneakily capture photos. Soon after, Don took everyone except Michael to a warehouse. Just as he was about to send them all to prison, Michael arrived, driving the taxi nonchalantly.
Yeah, but then I wouldn't be able to give you this. Press the video function. It wasn't a meeting between 2 Scylla cardholders, Agent Self. It was a meeting between all 6 cardholders. So now we know who has the other 5 cards, and that should mean something, even to someone whose word means nothing.
This was the first time Don witnessed Michael's formidable abilities. They had secretly investigated the company for over a decade with no breakthroughs, yet Michael managed to capture a photo of the 6 heads together within just a few days. Suddenly, Don had a bargaining chip. He bypassed his superiors and directly contacted a senator, who agreed to give them one more chance. Thus, the escape team was released, but they were only given 5 days. Without delay, Michael immediately started studying the photos. Don suddenly recognized one of the cardholders in the photo as extremely familiar. It was Griffin, the Minister of Finance, who worked in the same building as him. After all, they are on the same rope. Don decided to do it himself. Don grabbed the receiver, claiming a mysterious organization was manipulating bonds, and barged into Griffin's office, vividly describing the urgent situation. However, the receiver did not detect the presence of the data card. Griffin asked Don to leave and make an appointment, then opened a cabinet. It was a very sophisticated safe with a triangular loop symbol on it. When Griffin entered the password and fingerprint, Roland's signal instantly went full, indicating the second data card was inside. But copying the data card required 2 minutes. When Griffin placed something inside and immediately closed the cabinet door, the copying process was abruptly halted. Griffin told Don, "I'm flying to Asia in 6 hours. Let's talk when I get back. If you dare to barge into my office again, I won't be so polite." After hearing about the situation from Don, Michael asked him for a blueprint of the building. It seems it was time to return to old tricks. To the average Joe, this might just be a run-of-the-mill vacuum cleaner, but in Michael's hands, it becomes a crucial tool for cracking open safes. Michael removes the vacuum's air filter and silencer. Upon pressing the start button again, the vacuum immediately generates a tremendous noise. Just recently, the jailbreak squad acquired the government building's blueprints, and they're about to infiltrate the building to steal a priceless Scylla data card. A thorough investigation reveals the government building's security system is virtually impenetrable, with surveillance and alarms everywhere. Griffin's office is on the 10th floor, and his safe's 12-digit code is essentially uncrackable. The safe, made of 18 centimeters thick high-temperature resistant cobalt alloy, would take an hour to drill open, and the noise would be unavoidable. They concluded that stealing the Scylla data card from inside was nearly impossible, but Michael is exceedingly clever. He sets his sights on the office next to Griffin's. Once everything is ready, the heist officially begins. Don, using his Homeland Security agent status, leads the group to the government building's underground parking lot. Before leaving, he warns, "If you lot wanted criminals, get caught. Don't you dare say you know me." After closing the elevator door, to avoid surveillance and government personnel, Sucre dismantles the elevator button panel, turns off the camera, and sets the elevator to full mode to go straight to the 10th floor. Then, he crawls into the building's ventilation ducts through the elevator's maintenance hatch. The team splits up. Sucre and Bellic sneak into the storage room through the ventilation ducts first. However, just as Sucre is about to restore everything, a female employee suddenly barges in.
Sorry, I was just coming into... There's no more TP in the ladies' room.
We'll get right on that.
How about you get it right now?
But surprisingly, Bellic hands over a pack of wood pulp paper. They exchange glances, and Georgie, with a wave of his hand, decides to go get the toilet paper himself. At that moment, 2 drops of blood fall on Georgie's shoulder, fortunately without her noticing, but Lincoln accidentally learns of his brother's serious illness. As their mother showed the same early symptoms, their mother died of the disease at 30, and Michael turns 30 this year. On the other side, Don, sticking to the plan, invites an official from the neighboring office out to lunch and takes the opportunity to spray black dye at the entrance of his office. Soon after, Sucre and Bellic, dressed as janitors, use the pretext of a stain on the carpet discovered by chance to bring in a vacuum cleaner for cleaning. Meanwhile, Michael and Lincoln drop down from the ventilation ducts. They move a bookshelf on one side of the wall, behind which lies Griffin's safe in the neighboring office. Michael opens his toolkit, takes out a metal detector to locate the exact position of the safe, and waits for the others to start the vacuum. Sucre and Bellic begin to clean the stain in earnest. When they turn on the modified noisy vacuum cleaner, the secretary can't concentrate on her work due to the loud noise. Of course, she couldn't possibly hear any noise coming from inside the office. Lincoln cuts through the wall's insulation, while Michael mixes aluminum powder with iron oxide powder on the side. Lincoln wants to ask his brother how long he's been bleeding from the nose, but Michael insists it's a minor issue, as their priority is to get the Scylla. After Lincoln makes a shallow groove with a slotting machine, Michael sprays the groove with a mixture of the 2 powders. This triggers the famous thermite reaction. The aluminum powder oxidizes intensely under the high temperature generated by the slotting machine, releasing a tremendous amount of heat. This exothermic reaction can reach temperatures above 3,000 degrees Celsius, easily melting through 18 centimeters of cobalt alloy. Michael measures the depth with calipers, needing to drill another 16 millimeters to breach the safe's rear wall. Just then, Michael can clearly hear footsteps from the next office. It turns out that Krantz from the company has made a sudden visit. If he can hear Krantz's footsteps, it means the loud noise from this side can also be heard by Krantz. But the official from the neighboring office who went out for lunch is about to return, and with no way out, they have to take a risk. While the people in the next office start talking, Michael immediately has Lincoln continue the work. Almost the moment the drill starts, Krantz looks towards the wall from where the noise is coming. Fortunately, since most of the drilling was already done, it took less than 10 seconds to remove a neatly circular piece of the outer shell. Michael discreetly retrieves the second Scylla data card, instead of stealing the card directly, which might raise Krantz's suspicions and make acquiring the remaining 4 cards more difficult. Michael opts to copy the data using a receiver. However, copying the data card requires 2 minutes. While Michael is halfway through the copying process, Krantz suddenly asks to see the data card. Caught off guard, Michael quickly puts the data card back in its place, holding the receiver in one hand and the circular shell in the other, ready to reinstall it at any moment. Lincoln anxiously awaits a signal from Roland. Luckily, Just as Griffin is about to open the safe with his fingerprint, he complains about working with Krantz for 15 years and still not being trusted by him. It was precisely this brief time difference that allowed Michael to successfully copy the data and perfectly cover up any traces of having opened the safe. Krantz takes the data card, checks it, and immediately issues an order. Henceforth, all 6 cardholders must carry their cards with them at all times. This is because an incident at the first cardholder's home has already aroused his suspicions. After completing the mission, Michael and Lincoln restore the scene, and Sucre and Bellic leave with the cleaning cart. The 4 reunite in the elevator and escape the scene in Don's black van. The jailbreak squad is planning how to acquire the 3rd data card. Suddenly, Lincoln spots an old acquaintance nearby, T-Bag, whom they haven't seen in a long time. But how could T-Bag appear here, dressed in a sharp suit? It turns out that since T-Bag moved into James' mansion, he often studies a stack of documents carefully. These documents repeatedly mention a company called Gate, and James, under the alias Cole, is the top salesman of this Gate company, with a substantial bonus to his name. T-Bag calls the company and finds out that Gregory, the boss, has never met James. Thus, T-Bag set his sights on this bonus and directly impersonated Cole to arrange a meeting with Gregory, which is why he arrived here dressed to the nines. When T-Bag sees Lincoln and the others approaching, he turns and runs, throwing a bird guidebook into a nearby flower bed. However, wearing leather shoes, he couldn't run fast enough and Lincoln caught him.
Hey, Teddy.
That ain't the Brothers Grimm.
Easy, Link. Remember, we need him. Now, what are you doing in Los
I was
Angeles?
thinking about maybe getting me a career in pictures. If anyone's got a right to be pissed, it's me. You put me out to pasture back in Panama. Left me for dead, which makes it the 3rd time I believed. So congratulations, you got yourself a turkey.
Where's the bird book?
Bird book? Where's the book?
A nearby security guard, seeing a potential fight, immediately calls for backup. Still wanted criminals. The brothers don't want to escalate the situation. After searching T-Bag and not finding the book, they reluctantly let him go. After shaking off the 2, T-Bag picks up the book again and meets with Gregory at Gate Company. Leveraging his exceptional eloquence, T-Bag easily deceived Gregory and even secured himself a private office and an assistant named Andy. Andy mentions that this office was specifically requested by James, and its door number is also noted in the bird guidebook. Could this office hide some unknown secret? T-Bag sits in his office, sipping coffee and chatting away, completely oblivious to a drop of coffee silently trickling down the side of the cup. As T-Bag looks at the bird book on his desk, he suddenly notices a blue mark appearing on it. Realizing there must be a shocking secret hidden within this book, T-Bag grabs a piece of tissue, dabs it in coffee, and frantically wipes away, soon revealing a pattern resembling a ladder slowly emerging. Just as he wonders what this could be, the sudden appearance of 2 people at the door sends shivers down his spine. It turns out that since the last time Michael met T-Bag under the office building, he's had Sucre and Bellic sniffing around the neighborhood for any sign of T-Bag. Their goal was precisely to get their hands on this bird guide. Sucre tempts Trishan with the promise of $10,000 if she provides a lead. Realizing the gravity of the situation, T-Bag quickly grabs a fruit knife from the desk, ready to counterattack. Unexpectedly, Trishan does not seem to be swayed by money, claiming she hasn't seen the person in the photo. After sending the 2 away, Trishan looks meaningfully towards the office, leaving T-Bag completely puzzled about her motives. T-Bag thought his charm had won over Trishan, but it turned out to be a transaction in the end. Trishan demands a regular cut of 15% from T-Bag's sales commissions. Otherwise, she would call those 2 back since she had saved their phone numbers. Caught in a bind, T-Bag reluctantly agrees. As he has more pressing matters to attend to, T-Bag spends his days studying the strange patterns on the book but can't decipher their meaning. Until one day, a man with a menacing appearance suddenly shows up, saying nothing but placing a gun on the table.
You were supposed to deliver the item 2 days ago. Where is it?
Where's what?
I've traveled a long way, Mr. Pfeiffer. My patience is wearing thin. Playing games is not going to be good for either of us. Scylla, where is it?
This is the first time T-Bag has heard of Scylla. It's clear that Feng Huan had some deal with James, but T-Bag has no idea what Scylla is. Feng Huan bluntly states, "Give me Scylla within 2 days, and I'll pay you as we agreed. But if I don't see the goods the day after tomorrow, I'll blow your head off."
No problem.
T-Bag so readily agrees because he realizes the sum could be astronomical. Even if he can't find Scylla in 2 days, he can just wipe his butt with the promise and vanish. T-Bag firmly believes the bird guide is key to finding Scylla. he notices a page marked with an 8x10 square, thinking it's the office's floor plan, but after walking 8 steps as indicated, he discovers nothing. At that moment, he noticed a taped-off utility room in the office, so he snuck into it. Starting from the corner of the wall, Teabag walks 8 steps, knocking and tapping around, yet finds nothing. Just as he senses something off with the floor sound, Trishan walks in to warn him of trouble. It turns out Andy has discovered issues with Teabag's resume and many holes in his sales record, concluding Teabag is a fraud, and has already notified the police, who will arrive in 5 minutes. Knowing a police investigation would immediately expose his fugitive status, Teabag, albeit reluctantly but prioritizing survival, quickly wipes away all fingerprints he's left behind. After a brief farewell to Trishan, Teabag rushes out in a frantic escape. Once back at his hideout, he immediately packs up, ready to disappear, but just then, a formidable woman punches him to the ground.
Who the hell are you?
This is the 10th day Gretchen has been locked in the dungeon. She appears to be on her last breath from the torture, but in reality, Gretchen is slowly prying a nail out of the chair with her fingernails. For freedom, she's willing to endure even if it means staining the wood with her blood. Persistence pays off, and the day the guard comes in to change the urine bucket, Gretchen kicks him down and clamps his head between her legs. Then, the sharp nail is driven straight into his temple. Gretchen pulls out the key, unlocks her handcuffs, and tears off the tape on her mouth. A plan for revenge has already begun to take root in her heart. Dragging her bruised body, Gretchen arrives at her sister Rita's house. Looking at her bruised reflection in the mirror and recalling the years of dedication to the company, only to end up like this, Gretchen feels a deep sense of injustice. Her blue eyes blaze with anger. Vowing to bring down the company and make them pay a painful price, Gretchen smashes open a piggy bank hidden here. The guns and cash inside astonish Rita. She approaches a girl playing by herself, whose blue eyes are identical to Gretchen's.
You be a good girl, okay? Bye, Emily.
Bye, Auntie.
After leaving Rita's place, Gretchen, posing as James's wife, goes to the lost and found to claim James's belongings, but without a marriage certificate. Her request is denied on the spot. Gretchen doesn't waste words, simply punching him as a lesson for his refusal. She quickly grabs James's file bag, which contains a phone with an unread message from Gate Company. Gretchen finally learns of James's other identity. At that moment, Teabag, whose impersonation has been exposed and is preparing to flee, is knocked down by Gretchen with a punch.
Who the hell are you?
Teabag is tied up, and at this point, he can only divulge everything about how he impersonated someone and threatens that Scylla and the office of Gate Company must be closely related, and now only he can get into that office. If Gretchen kills him, they'll never get their hands on Scylla in their lifetime. But Teabag doesn't know she's a ruthless character. Gretchen pulls out a knife, slashes Teabag's arm, and then slowly moves the blade towards his lower half, threatening to cut it off and feed it to the dogs if he doesn't cooperate in obtaining Scylla. Teabag has no choice but to cave, marking the beginning of their official partnership in forming the Plastic Alliance. Meanwhile, Bellick got a call from Trishan at Gates' front desk. Turns out, with Teabag planning to flee, her chance at a sales commission vanishes, so she'd rather sell information for $10,000, prompting her to call. At this time, the jailbreak squad has already locked onto the third cardholder. The data card is important, and the bird guidebook is equally key to unlocking Scylla. Michael decides to split up. He, Mahone, and Bellick will deal with Teabag, while the others go to Las Vegas to steal the card from the cardholder. The trio arrives at the meeting place, with Michael sending Bellick to the rooftop to meet Trishan first. But when Bellick doesn't come down after a long wait, Michael and Mahone have no choice but to go up, immediately sensing something is off upon seeing them. However, at that moment, Teabag emerges from behind a car with a gun, revealing that Bellick and Trishan have been taken hostage and used as bait to lure them up. Just as Teabag is about to shove them into the car, the agile Mahone leaps off the platform. Teabag's arm, slashed by Gretchen, makes it difficult for him to hold the gun steady, forcing him to watch Mahone escape. Luckily, he has finally captured his deeply hated Michael and immediately ties them up in the mansion.
Just tell me what you want.
I want to make you bleed. I want to release the sinner inside of me that got me incarcerated so many years ago.
Teabag recalls how Michael caused him to lose an arm in the first season, sent him directly to Sona prison in the second, and in the third, left him surrounded by guards. Teabag wishes he could tear Michael to pieces, but for now, Teabag has to spare his life. As with his intelligence, he's incapable of deciphering the secrets in the bird guidebook. Michael was equally curious about the connection between this book and Scylla. In just half an hour, he sensed the secrets hidden within its pages. He put the blue lines together, which seemed to look like a design for some place. At the same time, Michael discovered a piece of paper with bird illustrations that read Gate, matching the logo on a nearby cardboard box. He discreetly tucked the paper away. Soon after, Gretchen, lurking in the shadows, spotted Bellick's ankle. Realizing it was a tracking device, she immediately called Teabag, instructing him to remove the gadget and then move the hostages to another location. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Mahone, having obtained the tracking system from Dawn, stormed in, only to find the place deserted. Fortunately, Mahone discovered a paper crane left by Michael, a symbol he used to communicate. Upon unfolding it, he found it was the very piece of paper with Gate written on it. Being a smart man himself, Mahone rushed to Gate Corporation to set up a defense. Meanwhile, Teabag had moved them to Trishann's house, and Michael had completed the blueprint, which showed that Gate Corporation was adjacent to the company. Starting from Teabag's office could lead directly to a part of the company, possibly related to Scylla. To find out, he had to check the site himself. Teabag doesn't know what Scylla is, but if so many people want it, it must be worth something.
Because you can smell that Scylla money, can't you? That's what you're in it for, just like me.
To gain Teabag's trust, Michael admitted he joined the fray for the money. Teabag informed Gretchen that Michael planned to go to the office. Gretchen stated that as long as she could obtain Scylla, whatever Michael did was acceptable. She also took care of a problem for Teabag by showing him the trunk of her car, where the bothersome Andy lay. In front of everyone, Gretchen cold-bloodedly strangled Andy to death, removing an obstacle. After clearing the way, Teabag confidently led Michael to the office. Following the clues from the bird guide, they lifted the floorboard to find a hidden passage below. This time, Teabag was wise, learning from the lesson at Sona prison, and had Michael go first.
Just like old times, pretty.
But regardless of Teabag's antics, he could never escape Michael's schemes. Just as they descended, Michael jokingly pulled open a metal door, suggesting he'd lock Teabag inside, almost making Teabag burst into laughter. At that moment, a figure approached silently. In an effort to get closer to the cardholder Howard, Sarah employed her charm, approaching him with alluring grace. Unexpectedly, Howard barely gave her a second glance, uttering a few polite words before leaving the scene. For the first time, Sarah felt a sense of defeat. Was it her looks, or was Howard simply a gentleman? The bartender finally cleared her confusion.
Don't take it personally, you're not his type. Right before you sat down, he asked me if I liked the party.
It turns out Howard had a very peculiar taste. Thus, the task of approaching cardholder number 5 ultimately fell on the muscular and handsome Sucre. Although reluctant, Sucre had to sacrifice himself for the sake of the team. Sauntering to the poolside, his well-built and sturdy muscles shone under the sun, particularly dazzling. Howard's heart fluttered at the sight of such a specimen, and before Sucre could even remove his vest, Howard had already moved closer. After a fierce internal struggle, Howard finally mustered the courage to strike up a conversation. With some persuasion, Sucre felt his skin crawl, but eventually, he gritted his teeth and followed Howard into the room. After a few drinks, Sucre was on an emotional roller coaster. As Howard opened the safe to retrieve some cash, Roland began copying the Scylla data on his end.
Filling up nice. Sucre must be in close proximity. Getting oiled, most likely.
Howard slowly approached Sucre, the atmosphere turning ambiguous. Meanwhile, Howard shared his story. During his service on the battlefield, a stray bullet hit him in the groin area, 3 square inches up the thigh, rendering him impotent ever since. Sucre was completely dumbfounded. Then why did you bring me here?
Mr. Villalobos, I'd like you to meet my wife.
I'm Alexa.
Turns out, Howard enjoyed live shows. While the data had been successfully copied, Lincoln and the others were still anxiously waiting, fearing for Sucre's safety. An hour later, Sucre returned, All smiles. Handing the receiver to Roland, Sucre sternly warned that if anyone dared to speak of this, he'd bash their head in. With the mission accomplished, the group prepared to return to Los Angeles. Claiming he needed to use the restroom, Roland headed to the arcade machine, intending to cheat for a quick profit using the receiver. However, due to his criminal history, the casino staff had been watching him and expelled him, confiscating the only receiver in the process. But without the receiver, how would they copy the last Scylla card? Back at the base, Michael and the others heard that Roland had lost the receiver and told him to go back to his room and not to leave and never to take part in the operation again. But Roland was still holding a grudge, so he secretly used his computer to find out the phone number of Wyatt, one of Krantz's top assassins, and sent him a message. Wyatt had been investigating the whereabouts of Michael and the others but struggled due to their new identities provided by Dawn, leaving him clueless about the escape team's location. Picking up the phone, Wyatt saw a message that listed how much Michael's address was worth. In Prison Break, he is the most ruthless fugitive to himself. Just a short while ago, one of his hands was tied to a radiator. Hearing the approaching sirens outside, T-Bag, in agony, bit off the hand that had just been stitched up days before. By the time the police arrived, all that was left in the corner was a blood-drenched severed hand. And now, T-Bag found himself locked in a cage by Michael once again. To unlock the cell door, he had to remove his prosthetic rubber hand. Unfortunately, the prosthetic hand fell to a place utterly out of his reach. Dawn assured Michael that he would imprison T-Bag and keep a strict watch over him. Once Scylla was in their hands, he would send T-Bag to prison to face his deserved fate. But the question remained, what secrets lay beneath this office? Michael explains that our priority is to get the last data card. Then, they could start from the office's basement, pass through a tunnel, and arrive at Krantz's office in the adjacent building. There, a device capable of decrypting Scylla's data awaited, and successfully accessing the data would utterly destroy the company. As the trio walked out of the building, they suddenly heard a phone ringing under a trash can, with an envelope beneath it. Mahone opened it to find it contained parts of the bird guide. It turned out the map in Michael's hands was incomplete, and the crucial pages had been removed. The woman claimed that if they didn't bring T-Bag to her, they could forget about getting the remaining pages. Michael hastily took the phone.
Hello, Michael.
They agreed to meet at a church. Gretchen cut straight to the chase, proposing they collaborate to bring down the company. Although this person had once tortured Sarah beyond recognition, holding the key pages of the bird guide forced Michael to agree reluctantly. Soon after, T-Bag was released. Gretchen instructed T-Bag that his task from now on would be to provide cover for them in the office alongside Trish-Ann. Michael and his crew would enter the tunnel from here to crack Scylla's data. But now T-Bag is scared of Michael. He advises Gretchen not to trust Michael. As they spoke, Phone Juan arrived at the office again. Today was the deadline to hand over Scylla. Seeing T-Bag unable to produce answers, Phone Juan pressed a gun against his head. Gretchen realized Phone Juan was the Scylla buyer James had negotiated with. She quickly intervened, claiming Scylla was within reach and asked Phone Juan to wait a few more days.
If I don't, I'll peel you like a wet grape. And the price is 100.
150.
125. Don't disappoint me.
125 million.
Hearing the $125 million figure, T-Bag's eyes lit up. Knowing they couldn't secure Scylla without Michael's intellect, T-Bag quickly changed his stance, urging Gretchen to mend fences with Michael. On the other hand, the Prison Break team still has to get the last data card, which is in the hands of the big boss, General Krantz. Without the receiver, they had to resort to the most brute force method. They acquired a broken car from a recycling center and fortified it, planning to create an accident to steal the data card for copying, to prevent Krantz from recognizing them and initiating an endless pursuit. Michael had Dawn procure an ambulance, Sarah disguised as a medical worker, ready to administer an anesthetic to Krantz after the crash, ensuring everything went without a hitch. Meanwhile, Wyatt connected with Roland, offering $1 million for the heads of the Michael brothers, though he was unsure if Roland's information was accurate. To show his sincerity, Roland immediately detailed the Prison Break team's car crash plan. At this moment, Lincoln and Sucre were ready, poised to crash into them. Unexpectedly, Upon receiving Wyatt's notification, Krantz immediately turned and fled. Realizing something was amiss, Michael quickly signaled for everyone to retreat, but it was already too late.
Get down! Get down! Hang on!
Wyatt fired several shots upon arrival, and Sucre was unfortunately hit in the abdomen. Lincoln hurriedly fled with him. After escaping back to the base, Sarah immediately tended to Sucre's wound. Michael, noticing the operation map in the hall, realized someone must have betrayed them, and Roland was the most likely suspect. He confronted Roland about the possibility of betrayal, which, of course, Roland would not admit. Without delving deeper, Michael simply returned the confiscated computer to him, asking him to check the surveillance cameras at the operation site. Soon after, Sucre's wound was treated, and Don called to say that the tracker on Roland's foot had gone offline. They rushed upstairs only to find that Roland had escaped. Roland arrived at the meeting place, still fixated on the $1 million, but to his surprise, Wyatt pulled out a gun and shot him in the knee.
The thing about a gunshot to the kneecap, it takes days to die from it. Now, if I were to shoot you, let's say, here, the hollow point would tumble through you, leaving white-hot slivers in your insides, causing unimaginable pain, only ending when you bled out on this pavement.
Unable to bear the torture, Roland immediately revealed the location of their secret base, but, having got his answer, Wyatt shot him again. Just as Wyatt was preparing to leave, Mahone arrived and knocked Wyatt down with a bat. This man was the cruel murderer of his son, and Mahone's rage peaked. He unleashed a flurry of punches on Wyatt. Just as Mahone was about to kill him, Lincoln urgently stopped Mahone and took Wyatt away. Michael opened Roland's backpack and took out a notebook, revealing that a tracker had been installed inside. Unable to bear the thought of Roland dying alone, Michael held his hand, offering him the last bit of warmth before death. Do you know where the most sensitive nerve endings in the human body are located? The answer is in the fingertips. Even minor injuries can cause intense burning pain. And now, Mahone pulled out a 5-inch thin needle and forcefully inserted it into Wyatt's middle finger. The slow, piercing pain quickly shot up to his brain, making Wyatt scream in excruciating agony. From a physiological perspective, when the human body cannot withstand extreme pressure, it will initiate a protective mechanism and fall into shock. But Mahone would not let Wyatt pass out just like that. Mahone had prepared a taser in advance, programmed to automatically activate if Wyatt's heart rate fell below 50. This setup ensured that Wyatt would be immersed in a state of pain every minute, every second, caught in a limbo of desiring to live yet wishing for death. In the hour that followed, Mahone sat quietly by, savoring Wyatt's screams, for only this could slightly alleviate the pain of losing his son. Wyatt couldn't hold out any longer and begged Mahone for mercy. Mahone called his ex-wife Pam, wanting her to hear the murderer apologize with his own words.
I'm sorry.
It's over. And I love you.
Because of the death of his son, Mahone was never able to face Pam, and Pam was in tears all day long. Although they still loved each other deeply, they could never return to how things were before. Mahone took Wyatt to the coast on his own, tying several tens of pounds of rocks to Wyatt's hands before unhesitatingly pushing him into the vast sea. From that moment on, Mahone completely let go of the hatred that had been choking his heart. From now on, he planned to wholeheartedly assist Michael in completely dismantling the company that caused all their tragedies. Meanwhile, Wyatt's disappearance alarmed Krantz, who urgently convened a meeting with the 5 cardholders to decide to move Scylla's decryption device out of the company building. But suddenly, the cold-faced Gretchen stormed into the office. Logically, Krantz should have feared Gretchen's revenge since the company had abandoned her and even ordered her death. But unexpectedly, Krantz remained calm and dismissed all his bodyguards.
Lisa? I knew you'd come home.
Gretchen is Krantz's trusted advisor, and their relationship goes beyond superior and subordinate. The biological daughter Gretchen hid at her sister's house was indeed hers and Krantz's. With just a few sweet words, Krantz made Gretchen hesitate whether to return to his side. as if she had lost her soul. To show sincerity, Krantz continued to discuss the matter of moving the Scylla decryption device in front of Gretchen. Due to the device's immense size and complexity, dismantling it would take at least 3 days. This meant that within 3 days, Michael and his team had to obtain the 6th data card and also ensure the passage to the company was opened before the device was moved. Currently, since the theft of the 6th data card just failed, Krantz would surely be on guard, so Michael decided to change tactics and open the tunnel first. The team studied the design map leading to the company, most of which Michael knew like the back of his hand. Only the end of a certain corridor, marked with a conspicuous cross, was unknown, and Michael decided to scout it out first. Teabag covered for Michael and his crew at Gate Company, allowing them to enter smoothly with tools. They reached the storage room and opened the cover plate, finding the space below larger than expected, with immense noise emanating from its depths. After climbing up and down, twisting and turning, they finally reached the end of the corridor. Seeing the scene before him, Michael understood the meaning of that cross. It turned out to be one of Los Angeles's main water pipelines, with a terrifying diameter of over 3 meters and a flow rate of 30,000 liters per second. Lincoln knocked on the iron pipe wall, and the dull sound indicated the wall was at least 30 centimeters thick, meaning crossing from here was nearly a pipe dream. But this was the only route, and they couldn't risk digging too close to the surface, so they had to start from below the pipeline. However, after breaking open a gap, they discovered the area below the pipeline was reinforced concrete, making digging through virtually impossible. At this impasse, Michael made a bold decision to break the water pipeline and directly cross to the other side from inside. The others were stunned by Michael's crazy idea, but since it was the only way to reach the other side, they had no choice but to follow his orders with mixed feelings of doubt and trust. Michael instructed Sucre to dismantle a nearby sewage pipeline for use, then handed a blueprint to Lincoln. Lincoln and Bellick's task was to sabotage the water supply's control system to dry up the water pipeline for a while. They sneak into the waterworks and pry open the main switchboard to find the switchblade according to the simple drawing Michael gave them. Bellick took out a bottle of accelerant and sprayed flames towards the switchblade, instantly burning the circuit board and causing the pressure and water gauge to drop to 0. Meanwhile, Michael and Sucre already taken down the waste pipe, suspending it mid-air with ropes before marking the size of the hollow iron pipes opening on the main pipeline. Hearing the rumbling water sounds gradually fade, Michael knew the first step of the plan had succeeded, but this action affected the drinking water of millions in Los Angeles, and the government would surely repair it within an hour, meaning their operation time was limited to 60 minutes at most. Without delay, the two sprang into action, but just as Michael bent over to pick up the welding torch, a sharp pain made his head split with agony, causing him to collapse. Even exhibiting brief epileptic symptoms, Sucre was shocked and drenched in cold sweat.
Michael! Bobby, what's wrong?
After the situation eased, Michael asked Sucre not to tell anyone about his condition. Sucre just kept quiet. Anyone in the world could betray Michael but not Sucre. After 20 minutes of relentless effort, welder Sucre finally cut an opening along the drawn outline. Michael asked him to use his belt as a measuring tool to cut a similarly sized hole on the opposite wall of the pipe. However, just as Sucre was about to finish, the gas suddenly ran out, leaving them with only a little over 10 minutes until the deadline. To save time, Michael, not fully recovered, had to endure his illness and help Sucre knock out the remaining pieces. By the time Lincoln and Bellick returned, the holes on both sides were already made. Now, by inserting the sewage pipe, they could use it as a passage to freely move between the two buildings underneath. But the sewage pipe was too heavy. Two people had to enter the hole to lift the other end and then jointly push the pipe slowly into the hole on the opposite side. However, the risk was extremely high, as there were only 5 minutes left until the water supply was restored. Lincoln volunteered to lead, and Bellick also offered to go. Michael wanted to go himself but was stopped by Bellick, who could clearly sense something was wrong with Michael's health. Yet, Michael could never have imagined that this farewell would be forever. Lincoln and Bellick lifted the hose and slowly dragged it towards the opposite hole. As they neared, they propped up the pipe wall with sticks and then hurriedly climbed out to the other side. But unexpectedly, the sticks were too frail, lasting only a few seconds before snapping under pressure, causing the sewage pipe to fall. They tried their hardest to lift it, but it was futile. To their despair, the chilling sound of rushing water was already approaching in the distance. Lincoln wanted to give up, but without this opportunity, they would never be able to obtain Scylla and take down the company. Bellick didn't want to lose all his hard work, so he defied Lincoln and jumped into the hole in order to be free, then used all his strength to carry the hundreds of kilograms of steel pipe alone. Michael, hearing the increasingly loud sound of water, saw Bellick persevering through a crack and shouted loudly for Bellick to come back. Knowing Bellick was determined to face death, Michael and the others, bearing immense heartache, gradually pushed the water pipe into place. In his final moments, Bellick remembered Lincoln had children but forgot about his own 80-year-old mother. For the safety of the others, Bellick chose to stay in the water, facing the rushing torrents alone, showing a look of fear and resolve. In that moment, Bellick was a hero to everyone. Before the operation, Bellick had a premonition he might not return. He asked Sucre to call his mother in case of his accident, wanting her to know her son hadn't disgraced her. The team at the base hadn't yet recovered from the grief of Bellick's death. Sucre, composing himself, inquired about Bellick's body. Don, in bureaucratic tone, said it was en route to the morgue but would be stored as a John Doe in Homeland Security's morgue to avoid leaking secrets. Sucre, enraged, confronted Don.
He's got a mother, you know.
Mahone intervened, warning Don that if he wanted Scylla, he'd have to return Bellick's body to his mother. Faced with determined eyes, Don had no choice but to agree. While clearing out Bellick's belongings, Mahone found a silver badge, hidden by Bellick during the second Scylla capture. Sucre, heartbroken, mentioned that Bellick had failed the police academy 5 times while working as a guard at Fox River State Penitentiary. Bellick's lifelong dream was to become a police officer, a dream unfulfilled even in death. Eventually, Bellick's body was returned. Mahone placed the badge on Bellick's chest in the hope that in the other world he would wear the shiny badge and fulfill his quest for justice.
His mom will appreciate that.
Sucre, gathering courage, called Bellick's mother to tell her that her son had died heroically on a secret mission for his country. All of them continue to fight with Bellick's will. After all, taking down the company is the best thing that could have happened to him. At this point, Gretchen had returned from Krantz and handed over the missing pages of the bird guide to Michael, revealing that her joining Krantz was actually a ruse to gather intelligence. Krantz was moving the Scylla device tomorrow, leaving them less than a day. Gretchen took responsibility for the 6th data card, leaving Michael and the team to focus on breaking through the underground passage. Back at the base, Michael pieced together Gretchen's pages with the map. The map showed the water pipeline was 30 meters from the Scylla decoder's location, separated by a steel fiber reinforced wall. The good news is the company doesn't want to leave any visual evidence of Scylla's existence, so there are no cameras in the room. But what's utterly disheartening is that the room is equipped with weight, heat, and sound sensors. Any living thing over 2 pounds triggers the company's security alarm. In other words, they must chisel through that wall without making a sound. Then, without emitting heat or touching the ground, approach the decoder. It seems like an impossible task, but Michael decides to give it a shot anyway. However, just then, a severe headache strikes again, sending Michael spinning and eventually collapsing to the ground. With the linchpin gone, it essentially spells the end for the plan. Despite Don's desperate attempts to prevent it, the group decides to take Michael to the hospital. Tests revealed that Michael had a very rare misshapen tumor in his hypothalamus and that the tumor was getting bigger. Michael's mother died from a brain tumor, suggesting the disease might be hereditary. Given the family history, the doctor insists he undergo surgery tomorrow.
It feels that you need surgery.
2 days. That's what I need.
Tomorrow. Otherwise you could die and there's no alternative.
Against all expectations, the always icy and heartless Gretchen actually donned a uniform to get close to Krantz and secure the 6th Scylla card. Gretchen struck various provocative poses, then had teabag snap photos to send to Krantz. Upon receiving the message, Krantz was overjoyed. Ignoring Lisa's objections, he insisted on keeping the appointment, saying he'd be back in an hour. Soon after, Krantz arrived at the hotel. After a few pleasantries, he wanted to get straight to the point, as Gretchen helped him out of his jacket. Seizing the moment to steal the card, Krantz suddenly said,
I didn't bring it with me. My card. That is what you're looking for, right?
Clearly, Krantz had been cautious, but considering Gretchen had borne his child, he spared her life. The attempt to steal the card ended in failure. The pressure ultimately shifted back to Michael's side. Michael received the message in utter despair because not having the sixth card meant all their efforts over the past days were in vain. With less than 6 hours left until the Scylla decoder was to be moved, thankfully, Gretchen had Dawn give Michael a piece of information. Opening the envelope, Michael finally saw a glimmer of hope. He handed the photos from the information to Sarah, instructing her to deal with the person in them. Michael told Sarah he decided to join the main force in infiltrating the company's headquarters, putting off surgery until his return. With preparations complete, the escape team arrived at Gate Corporation to enter the underground space. Teabag hurriedly called Gretchen, but what they never expected was Trishan eavesdropping on their call. Indicating she was no ordinary person, Gretchen was surprised Michael started the operation without the sixth Scylla card. Teabag, knowing Michael's character well after countless encounters, was certain Michael wouldn't act without a thorough plan. Meanwhile, Michael and the others had already arrived at the wall. From now on, they had to remain absolutely silent. No one was allowed to speak because sound waves could pass through the wall and be detected by sensors on the other side. Everyone hugged one by one. Their fate depended on the next 3 hours. Sucre, wrapping the drill with soundproofing material, carefully made a hole in the seam of the wall, while Mahone measured how much deeper they needed to drill. As Sucre was about to break through the wall, to prevent debris from falling to the other side, they wrapped a vacuum cleaner with soundproofing material to suck up the last of the debris. The first hole was finally made. They inserted a camera to monitor the movements inside the room in real time. Next, Michael wrapped cables connected to 2 batteries around an iron bar, creating a simple electromagnetic field. After powering the batteries, Sucre used the iron bar to skin the steel fiber wall, since the electromagnetic field would slightly pull on the steel reinforcement while the concrete remained relatively fixed. The widening gaps would eventually cause the concrete to compress and loosen, allowing for easy removal with just a couple of wraps. Lincoln and Mahone drilled 2 small holes on either side, then stuffed and opened umbrellas through them to prevent concrete from falling to the ground and making a loud noise. With another scan of the electromagnetic field, the wall was finally breached. The 4 men looked towards the ultimate goal inside the room. Finally seeing hope, they were about to enter what was known as the world's most impenetrable room. But what they could never have anticipated was the trap set by the enemy behind them. Gretchen quietly walked into an office with a bag, inside of which were heavy weapons. It turns out they planned to block the way and kill them as soon as Michael got Scylla.
Only cherry that could top this sunny day. You can keep your Burrows and your Mahone and your Sucre. Just leave Schofield for me.
Their feet couldn't touch the ground, nor could they make any sound over 10 decibels, not even emit heat. They threaded a pole ring through a pre-drilled hole, then carefully hooked it onto a suspension ladder. As the ladder was extended, planks of wood were laid down to make it easier for people to walk. The high-sensitivity heat sensors detected human body temperature turning yellow, but they were ready for it. Sucre sprayed liquid nitrogen into the air to cool it, and the yellow light gradually turned green. However, just as they were about to reach their destination, the cables suddenly loosened. If the cooling gas fell to the ground and made a noise, the room's security alarm would immediately sound, leaving them no escape. In the nick of time, Lincoln hurried over to steady Sucre. They narrowly averted disaster. Minutes later, the gangway was finally installed, and Michael, carrying a backpack, took steps towards the ultimate goal. But suddenly, a severe headache struck again, and Michael nearly stumbled to the ground. Yet he bore the pain, daring not to make a sound. The hearts of the 3 behind him were in their throats. Michael's subconscious was awakened a little bit. He gave the OK sign to his companion, then he trembled to the glass door. This was the last line of defense for the Scylla decoder. Michael set down his backpack, took out 2 suction cups and attached them to the glass, then used a tempered glass cutter to score a neat circle. Finally, he twisted open a canister of liquid nitrogen, spraying the cut track to cause an instant cooling and contraction reaction. Easily removing the whole piece of glass, he carefully placed it on the ground. Under the watchful eyes of his 3 companions, they finally saw the legendary Scylla decoder. Countless people had died in the quest for Scylla. Michael couldn't help but gently touch it. However, The next second, the base's gravity sensor suddenly lit up red. In the office, Krantz received the alarm signal, immediately pulled up the surveillance, and was stunned by the scene before him. He ordered the building to be locked down and rushed to the basement with 2 elite subordinates, the elevator dinging directly to the room. Unexpectedly, Michael was surprisingly calm.
Drop him, or I blow his head clean off.
All of this was part of Michael's plan. He deliberately triggered the gravity sensor to lure Krantz down, making it easy to get the 6th Scylla card. Krantz didn't resist and handed over the card, knowing it was useless without the other 5 cards Michael already had. But the next second, Krantz's expression froze.
Soccer General.
Krantz couldn't fathom how Michael had stealthily acquired the other 5 cards. Michael inserted the card into the slot. It turned out the 6 so-called Scylla cards were merely keys to activate the decoder, while the real Scylla was actually a core component hidden inside the decoder.
This is Scylla.
Guess right now you wish you'd framed somebody else, huh, General?
You're not even close.
In front of Krantz, Michael packed Scylla into his bag, but they didn't return the way they came. Instead, they used Krantz's retina to enter his office. This series of moves utterly baffled Krantz. After all, if his subordinates saw this, the entire company building would be locked down, with hundreds of armed agents ready, which seemed like walking into a trap. But Michael had already devised a foolproof escape plan.
We have a major situation.
Michael, thank God.
We got it. How's it going on your end?
Pretty damn good. But give me 5 more minutes.
Gregory had just walked into Teabag's office when he spotted an assault rifle hidden in the corner. True to his battle-hardened nature, it took Gregory only a second to hide the shock in his eyes, feigning calmness and making up an excuse to leave the office. But the sharp-eyed Gretchen had already detected something amiss from Gregory's glance. Gretchen quickly picked up the rifle and strode towards Gregory's office, causing the employees to scream in terror. The situation escalated beyond control, forcing Teabag to take up arms in support, herding everyone into Gregory's office and then blocking the only exit. Minutes later, Trishan returned to the office, only to find it in complete disarray. Realizing something terrible had happened, she crouched down at the door, took out a key, and planned to sneak in to rescue. Teabag grew increasingly impatient, wondering why Michael and his crew hadn't emerged from the basement. He suspected they had found another exit and should evacuate immediately. Gretchen urged him to be patient, reminding him that $125 million was within reach. Their argument provided Trishan the chance to slip into Gregory's office.
It's okay. Got our agent. Now quick, I'm gonna help you.
It turns out Trishan's true identity was NSA agent Miriam. However, Gregory, a selfish coward, only cared about his own escape after being unbound, neglecting the safety of others. As Gregory dashed for the door, Gretchen put him down with a burst of gunfire. Gregory's escape exposed Miriam's whereabouts. A fierce shootout ensued. Realizing their position was untenable, Gretchen and Teabag quickly retreated. At the parking lot, Gretchen instructed Teabag to wipe the fingerprints off the gun and throw it into a trash can, as walking around with a gun would easily attract attention. But the next second, Gretchen pulled out a handgun and aimed it at Teabag. Unexpectedly, Gretchen planned to eliminate Teabag to save herself and sever ties with Scylla completely. But Miriam suddenly appeared, allowing Teabag to escape in the confusion. Knowing she couldn't stay long, Gretchen also fled in the opposite direction. Miriam chose to track Teabag, who once again ended up in police custody.
Turn around. Turn around.
Gentle now, sugar.
That's Special Agent Miriam Holtz to you, sugar. Let's go.
Meanwhile, a large number of agents gathered in Krantz's office, ready with a battering ram to break in when Michael suddenly received a phone call. The call was on speakerphone, and to everyone's surprise, it was Krantz's daughter Lisa's voice.
It's Tancredi. She says if you don't let Michael and the others leave with Scylla, she'll kill me. Dad?
Just 5 minutes earlier, a waiter bribed by Sarah had deliberately spilled soup on Lisa, who was dining out. While Lisa was cleaning up in the restroom, Sarah pointed a gun at her head. Krantz's complexion turned deathly pale, He had never disclosed his daughter's identity for over 30 years. How did this person know Lisa was his daughter? But it no longer mattered. As a father, Krantz reluctantly headed to the door, ordering everyone to back off, and led the four out of the office. Michael walked out of the building with Krantz, stating they would release his daughter once they were safe.
We did this to you. We did this to you.
After escaping pursuit, Michael officially handed Scylla over to Don, declaring their mission complete and leaving the downfall of the company to him. Don handed over the relocation paperwork for everyone's release, promising to send a car to pick them up in half an hour to go through the process. After going through the process, they could live in peace and quiet. Immediately after Don finds Miriam, who turns out to have been his eyes and ears at Gate all along, Don asked Miriam if she knew who wanted to buy Scylla. Miriam suggested Teabag might know, and if offered a sweet deal during interrogation, he would surely talk. But as soon as Miriam finished speaking, Don shot her dead. Teabag was dumbfounded. He would never have thought that this man could hide so deeply. Don's next move left Teabag utterly stunned. Don called the NSA leadership, falsely claiming Michael and the others had kept Scylla for themselves, while simulating gunfire to fake his own death.
About this whole operation. No. Burroughs! Burroughs!
Don! By framing Michael successfully, Don made himself vanish from the scene. Unaware of the betrayal, Michael and his team celebrated and said their farewells, waiting for someone to come and restore their identities. They waited and waited, but no one came to pick them up and restore their identities. So they called and found out Don's number had been cancelled. Opening their pardon documents, they found nothing but blank papers. Realizing it had been a long-planned scam from the start, Don had monopolized Scylla and pinned the theft on them, forcing them into a life of flight once again. Huddled in a dimly lit rental, they watched as the news broadcast Teabag and Gretchen's hostage situation at Gate Corporation. Michael suddenly realized that if Don intended to monopolize Scylla for profit, he would definitely seek out Gretchen, as, apart from the deceased James, only she could connect with the buyers. Sure enough, at that moment, Don was on his way to find Gretchen, with the opportunistic Teabag sitting beside him. As long as there was money to be shared, Teabag would ally with anyone. Having seen Gretchen's file, Teabag knew she had a sister. Finding Gretchen's sister would lead them to her. Gretchen came to the place where she made the deal with Fong Huan and found that they had been killed by the company's men. It was then Lincoln unexpectedly called. Gretchen never thought that Scylla would end up in Don's hands, so she simply teamed up with Michael and the others to take Scylla. They agreed to meet in the park in an hour. However, just after hanging up, Rita called, revealing that Don had kidnapped Rita and Gretchen's daughter, Emily.
What's up, Gretchen? Time to come home now.
Gretchen rushed home in a panic. Don confiscated Gretchen's gun and mobile phone and found her phone records with Michael. With her family's life under threat, Gretchen had no choice but to reveal the park where she was meeting Michael. To eliminate any worries, Don immediately had Teabag report the meeting location to the NSA. Shortly after, Michael and his team arrived at the meeting spot. During that time, he made a call to the NSA leadership to explain that it was Don who had monopolized Scylla. While on the phone, Michael heard the sound of a fire truck, and the next second, he saw a fire truck drive past in front of him. Realizing they had fallen into a trap, Michael quickly notified the others to evacuate. Meanwhile, Don had Teabag stay behind to watch over Gretchen's family while he took Gretchen to meet with a new buyer. After the meeting, the buyer confirmed it was indeed Scylla, but a component was missing from the middle.
What are you talking about?
It's incomplete.
Incomplete? Who is this clown?
Clown?
Yeah, clown.
There's a piece missing, Slick. Look, here.
Don was taken aback, realizing Michael must have kept a piece. Sure enough, as expected, during their time in Krantz's office, Michael had discovered this chip and hidden it in the restroom at the base.
Hello, Don.
I believe you have something that belongs to me.
Come and get it.
He was a fugitive wanted for the murder of 6 children, and just because someone bore a slight resemblance to him, Teabag ruthlessly picked up a metal object from the table and struck the other's head. Yet, even such an utterly wicked person deeply yearned to be an ordinary good person. Not long ago, Teabag assumed someone else's identity and became the sales director of a company. The boss's commendation allowed him to experience the joy of being an ordinary person for the first time. It was from this moment that Teabag truly wanted to tear off the murderer's label and live an ordinary, mundane, and free life. However, his greed was still lurking within him. For money, Teabag once again became someone else's accomplice. Following Don's orders, he took Gretchen's sister Rita and daughter Emily hostage. Just then, a zealous priest suddenly showed up to peddle Bibles. Teabag wanted to drive him away, but the priest kept on talking non-stop about the Bible, showing no intention of leaving. Suddenly, Teabag noticed the military academy ring on the priest's finger. Mistaking the priest for an assassin sent by the company, Teabag suddenly threw a heavy punch, knocking him to the ground. After dragging the priest into the room, Teabag asked Don what to do with this guy, and was instructed to do away with the priest. In the past, killing someone was something Teabag could do without even blinking an eye, but now he hesitated, because once he pulled the trigger, the life he longed for would truly disappear forever. Teabag decided to give the priest another chance. He asked the priest to recite a passage from the Bible and state which chapter and verse it was from. Hearing the priest recite it flawlessly, Teabag was incredibly happy. Unexpectedly, the always cruel and brutal man smiled because he didn't have to kill anyone. Teabag, feeling a burden lifted, threw away the handgun. Along with his past dirtiness, he secretly let Rita and Emily go, urging them to escape as far as possible. Then, Teabag also untied the ropes binding the priest's hands and feet, but as soon as the priest stood up, he landed a punch on Teabag's face.
Yeah, I got one.
Teabag never expected that the other party was indeed an assassin sent by the company. From then on, Teabag fell into the company's hands again. Meanwhile, Don, knowing that Michael had stolen parts of Scylla, immediately stormed the base, furiously deploying tear gas grenades in an attempt to force Michael to surrender.
You're surrounded. Come out with your piece of Scylla, Michael.
But Lincoln was lurking nearby, following the sound of gunfire to the rooftop and easily taking down this deceitful man. However, Gretchen, who was lying in ambush, also rushed in. During the confrontation, Don finally reveals why he stole Scylla. He had been working diligently for the government for the past 17 years, only to end up as a lowly clerk. He figured he might as well sell Scylla and retire early. In the end, Don did not forget to entice Michael. They could find a buyer who could take down the company, thus achieving your goal while also getting a big share of the money. Michael pretended to agree, actually buying time. He quietly had Sucre sneak into their car's trunk. Sucre followed them to their hotel, and the group immediately set up defenses there, ready to snatch Scylla once again. But Don was not so naive. Among the tear gas grenades he had launched, one contained an ultrasonic device. He had the warehouse under his complete control. Thus, Don discovered the Scylla part hidden in the restroom. The escape team surrounded the hotel, ready to act, due to tampering with the emergency stairs beforehand. As Don tried to escape and fell to the ground, Michael seized Scylla and hurriedly fled. But Michael hadn't gotten far when a severe headache struck again, and a torrent of blood poured from his nostrils, eventually leaving him powerless and collapsed on the ground. Don seized Scylla once again.
Like I said before, this is just business.
However, at that moment, the company's assassins suddenly appeared, and Gretchen hurriedly took Don away. Eventually, the unconscious Michael fell into the company's hands, and Lincoln, hiding in a corner, could only watch helplessly as his brother was taken away. On the other hand, the fleeing Don and Gretchen hurried to the base and effortlessly found the missing part of Scylla. When Lincoln and the others arrived back at the base, they realized that they had lost both their lives and their troops. An unprecedented sense of frustration instantly crushed the prison break team. They were utterly lost. With no other options, Lincoln approached the company's Krantz. Krantz directly proposed a deal. If you help me retrieve Scylla, the company can provide Michael with the most advanced treatment. At this point, they had no bargaining chips. To save his brother, Lincoln had to go against his conscience and work for the company they had tried so hard to take down.
What's this? Added incentive.
The doctor drilled into Michael's skull and inserted 2 catheters, yet Michael felt no pain and remained fully conscious. Sarah, anxious and uneasy, inquired about the purpose of the catheters. The doctor explained that there was an egg-sized arteriovenous malformation in Michael's brain. The catheters were meant to isolate the tumor, but they would also stimulate the brain. hearing, smell, and memory would be triggered as well. At that moment, Michael's memories flashed before his eyes like a revolving lantern, and his consciousness seemed to return to Fox River State Penitentiary. He saw the familiar wash basin in front of him and heard a kind voice behind him. It was Charles, who had died. They began a dialogue about the meaning of life. Michael's eyes were filled with guilt. In his quest to save his brother Lincoln, he had deceived too many people. Perhaps if it weren't for his selfishness, many people wouldn't have died. Charles urged him not to blame himself. After all, some things are beyond our control. Michael turned around, and the information hidden in his memories covered the walls. Yet, the current him had not obtained evidence of the company's crimes and had lost the faith to continue fighting. Charles reminded him that things are not always what they seem on the surface. Everything you experience has its own significance. This statement sparked an inspiration in Michael. All along, they had thought Scylla was a hard drive storing the company's illegal operations. But if it were that simple, why would the company protect it with such tight security instead of just destroying it? Michael connected the fragments of his memories about Scylla. It was the residual memory from the last time he hid and eavesdropped on a conversation among the company's 6 heads, during which a word was repeatedly mentioned. Michael grasped the last few minutes before breaking out of the dream and tried hard to break down this word with a marker pen. It was not until this moment that he truly understood the meaning of Scylla. Meanwhile, in reality, the arteriovenous malformation in Michael's brain was finally removed, but his heartbeats suddenly dropped to 0. The doctors were frantic and at a loss, but Sarah, unwilling to give up and inspired by love, finally brought Michael back to life. He told Sarah the answer. The letters split into 4 rare elements from the periodic table. Theoretically, if these elements could be integrated into the design of solar cells, it would be possible to use solar energy at 100% efficiency. Whoever mastered this technology could change the global landscape. This is why someone was willing to pay hundreds of millions of dollars for Scylla. Their goal was not to take down the company but to become the company. On the other hand, Lincoln, who had already sided with the company, met Teabag under Krantz's arrangement, who had also been captured. To force out the location of Don and the buyer's transaction, Lincoln brutally pulled out Teabag's tooth.
I was just full of Arlington beer! Arlington beer!
When? What time?
3 o'clock.
At the dock, under Gretchen's arrangement, Don met with Patrick. Patrick begins to inspect the goods, and this time Scylla is really in one piece. Don asked Patrick if the real buyer was on his way, and when he got a positive answer, he shot Patrick dead. It turned out that Don wanted to deal directly with the buyer to save the 30% introduction fee. Gretchen was stunned by the hypocrisy of the man before her. Just then, Gretchen received a call from Rita, saying that she and Emily had safely escaped to a neighbor's house. Only Teabag had been taken away. Gretchen knew well that as long as Teabag was given a taste of sweetness or bitterness, he would surely reveal the time and place of the transaction, so she immediately notified the buyer to change the transaction location. By the time Lincoln arrived, Don and Gretchen had already disappeared without a trace. Soon after, Don and the new buyer came to a warehouse to make the transaction. The buyer accessed Scylla's data, which contained files on nuclear energy, wind energy, and solar energy. Clearly not the company's blacklist as previously claimed. This indirectly confirmed Michael's speculation. However, suddenly, Lincoln and Sucre, leveraging the company's powerful tracking capabilities, infiltrated the warehouse and were embroiled in a fierce gunfight with Gretchen. Meanwhile, the buyer had no intention of paying and took advantage of the chaos to flee with Scylla, shooting Don on the way out. Eventually, Gretchen ran out of bullets, and Don, severely injured, was taken back by Lincoln and Sucre.
Where is he?
I don't know. Where is he? I don't know.
Gone. Stolen.
By who? By who?
If I die, you'll never know.
On the way back, Sucre felt exhausted. Pardon was no longer an option, and now that Lincoln was safe and Michael's surgery had gone smoothly, he wanted to return to his own life. Lincoln understood his actions, and the two embraced and parted ways. Back at the company, Lincoln reported the situation to Krantz. Now that only Don and Gretchen knew the buyer's identity, Krantz suggested they form a new team to search for Scylla. Lincoln shared the deal he made with Krantz with Michael, who couldn't understand why Lincoln would help the company. Lincoln says, Just like you did when you got tattooed and went to jail to save my life. I don't care who gets Scylla. I only care if you live or die." He handed Michael the document Krantz had given him. Lincoln claimed our mother also worked for the company, and I am merely continuing the family business. But Michael clearly would not work for Krantz, insisting that Scylla, as cutting-edge technology, must not fall into the hands of a dangerous company. Eventually, the brothers parted ways on bad terms. Under Krantz's arrangement, Lincoln continued the pursuit of Scylla's whereabouts with this motley crew, each with their own agenda, with 3 teammates who all have a history of turning against each other. Can this odd combination finally succeed? Freshly recovered from a serious illness, Michael opened his eyes to find himself imprisoned in a villa deep within the jungle. It is situated somewhere near 60 miles away, and is so full of ferocious beasts that unarmed escape is almost impossible. Krantz had even sent one of the world's top psychologists, Roger, in an attempt to brainwash Michael into joining the company using various methods. But Michael, constantly thinking about how to bring down the company, would never become Krantz's lackey. With no other strategies available, Roger revealed a shocking secret.
Your mother works for us. Your mother is alive.
It turned out that Michael's mother was still alive and an important high-level executive at the company. For years, she had been secretly monitoring her son's movements, hoping that one day Michael would become her right-hand man. Roger tried to break through Michael's psychological defenses using the bond of mother and son, but was sharply rebuked by Michael. In Michael's view, if his mother was indeed a high-level executive at the company, why did she choose to stand by as Lincoln faced the electric chair at Fox River State Penitentiary?
So you did a little digging, good for you. But everything out of your mouth is a lie, and I don't believe a word of it.
Rational thought told Michael he couldn't just sit and wait to die. Michael carefully observed the situation inside the room, planning his escape. On the other hand, Lincoln, under Krantz's arrangement, continues to track down Scylla with this motley crew of men with their own agendas. But after a day's effort, they made no progress. Don thinks Lincoln is incompetent, so he allies with T-Bag in an attempt to seize leadership. Gretchen remains neutral, stating she is fine with whoever becomes the leader. Just when Lincoln was isolated and without support, Mahone finally returned after dealing with personal matters.
No. Perfect. The second you stop doing what I tell you to do, I'm gonna blow your brains out.
With Mahone by his side, Lincoln had enough support, and Don dared not oppose any longer. Meanwhile, an anxious Sarah informed Lincoln that Michael was being held captive, stating she would go to rescue Michael alone. Unknown to them, their conversation was overheard by T-Bag, who, eager to gain some advantage, hurriedly reported to Krantz.
Tancredi got the location on a shining night. She may be heading there now.
Exemplary, Bagwell.
Thank you, sir.
Upon receiving the news, Krantz urgently called Roger, instructing him to inject Michael with an anesthetic and then transfer him. At that moment, Michael was in the bathroom, planning his escape, intending to use a mix of 2 chemicals to corrode the water heater's piping. But just as Michael stepped out, 2 agents held him down and injected him with an anesthetic. However, at that moment, a loud noise came from the bathroom, and one agent rushed in to check. As the agent opened the door, the massive flow of water from the melted pipe knocked him down. Michael took advantage of the chaos to pick up a handgun, threatening the agents to inject Roger with the anesthetic, then ordered the bodyguards to handcuff themselves. Michael quickly left the villa. By then, the transfer vehicle arranged by Krantz had arrived. Upon entering the room and finding Michael had escaped, they immediately chased after him on ATVs. Freshly recovered from his illness, Michael couldn't possibly outrun the ATVs and was soon caught up.
Turn around!
But suddenly, a jeep sped towards them, knocking the agents aside, and the driver was none other than Sarah, who had come to rescue. After escaping pursuit, Michael urgently called Lincoln, trying to convince him not to work for Krantz, but Lincoln stated that to save your life, I've already signed a lifetime agreement with Krantz. Only by handing over Scylla to Krantz can everyone return to a peaceful life. Michael believed that Scylla, as the world's most cutting-edge technology, falling into the hands of a company up to no good would be unimaginable. Standing on their respective grounds, neither brother was willing to compromise. Turning from close comrades into opponents, Michael pays $100 to bribe the driver and hides in the cargo truck's compartment, preparing to head to Miami to compete for Scylla. Meanwhile, Gretchen successfully tracked down the buyer who had stolen Scylla. Scott. Turns out, Scott was also an internal agent for the company, but Gretchen didn't share this significant discovery with the team. Instead, she secretly arranged to meet Scott. Gretchen spends a reward of $10 million to help Scott escape the company's pursuit. From their conversation, it was clear Scott was just a worker, and Scylla had already been moved to the real mastermind behind the scenes. After Scott agreed, Gretchen lured the four to a building under the pretense of finding the buyer's address, planning to eliminate Lincoln and his group. Scott's agents surrounded the four, and Gretchen aimed her gun at Dawn. Upon realizing the betrayal, Dawn cursed out loud, using foul language. Just as Gretchen was about to pull the trigger, she remembered her daughter, her conscience kicking in. She suddenly turned the gun on Scott, taking down two of his men instantly. Scott attempted to retaliate, but Mahone shot Scott dead, and Gretchen also fell, wounded. Teabag snatched Scott's cell phone from his pocket, and Lincoln angrily aimed his gun at Gretchen. Teabag mentioned Gretchen had an 8-year-old daughter, softening Lincoln's heart, leaving the severely injured Gretchen to fend for herself. Back at the hotel, as they pondered their next move, Scott's phone suddenly rang. Lincoln answered the call.
Hello? Your boy's dead. And now I'm coming after you. You hear me?
It turns out this person is Christina, the mother of Michael and Lincoln. Scylla has already fallen into her hands.
Who was that?
It was my son.
She is the most malevolent woman in the prison break and also Michael's mother. Now that Scylla is in her hands, Christina wants to eliminate Krantz to take sole control of the company. At this moment, Krantz is discussing plans with Griffin in a car. Suddenly, Griffin and the driver get out of the car without any warning, which makes Krantz sense something is wrong, but it's already too late. Krantz finds his seatbelt locked and frantically kicks open the wine cabinet to grab a bottle opener, desperately tearing at the seatbelt. After moving away, Griffin, smugly, presses the remote control in his hand. Because Griffin didn't check the body, Christina soon calls to tell him that Krantz might still be alive. Just moments ago, a helicopter suddenly descended on the company headquarters and took the severely injured Krantz back. Griffin immediately starts to panic, knowing Krantz is aware of his betrayal and that he must leave the United States immediately to avoid being hunted down, but Christina calmly stated that she had come up with a better way to make him disappear without a trace.
Do you mind putting me on speaker? You know, Griff, you're a brave man. And I thank you for everything you've done. It's been an honor.
Now what?
Just after hanging up the phone, Krantz calls, saying someone just tried to kill him, suspecting Christina is the mastermind behind it. Christina feigns concern for Krantz but mocks him for losing Scylla. "You'd be better off searching for Scylla than suspecting me," she says, then hangs up. It's clear from their conversation that the two corporate giants are at loggerheads. Meanwhile, on the other side, Michael and Sarah are hiding in the cargo compartment of a truck, getting ready to head to Miami in search of Scylla's traces. Suddenly, a police car stops the truck, claiming it's overloaded, and opens the cargo door for inspection. The man notices Michael's trouser leg but keeps quiet. He goes to the cab, takes out the driver with one shot, and then drives the truck forward. Inside, Michael and Sarah are incredibly tense, feeling trapped, trying to open the cargo door only to find it already locked. Calmly, Michael uses a rope to tie to the refrigerator and uses the inertia of the truck turning to break open the door, then jumps out with Sarah. The assassin, realizing something is wrong, quickly gets out to pursue. They run through the grass to an open factory building. Sarah picks up an iron rod. Michael goes out to lure the assassin. When the assassin slowly approaches, Michael suddenly strikes, knocking him to the ground, his head hitting a rock. Michael takes something out of the assassin's bag and finds a strange note. As the assassin is dying, he claims he wasn't sent by Krantz. Michael wants to ask more, but the assassin has already breathed his last. Michael closely examines the note, which clearly is an instruction from the mastermind to the assassin. The line indicates the time and place to intercept Michael and Sarah, exactly matching the location of the incident. MS coincidentally also stands for Michael's initials, suggesting the next line must be the person the mastermind wants Michael to meet. Michael decides to follow this clue in pursuit of Scylla, unaware he's falling into a huge conspiracy set by his own mother. Meanwhile, Lincoln locates the caller's address from a mysterious call received on Scott's phone, only to find the place deserted, leaving behind an old, yellowed photo on the table. Lincoln immediately recognizes it as an old photo of him and his mother from his childhood. Mahone and Lincoln observe the photo and notice the car is from 1978, while Michael was born in 1976. Clearly, a pregnant mother couldn't stand in front of this car for a photo, which must be a secret signal from the mother wanting a private meeting with Lincoln. The two men searched the license plate and found that it was in fact the coordinates for a hotel 5 kilometers away. Lincoln goes alone to the address from the photo, and soon Christina arrives. Mother and son reunite after more than 20 years, but as adversaries. Lincoln steals a glance at his mother, while Christina admits the hardest decision of her life was abandoning her sons. She wants Scylla because Krantz is unfit to control it. Krantz is too warlike and bloodthirsty. If a mother were in charge of the company, it would undergo earth-shattering changes. If Krantz were dead, no one would chase after you. She hopes the brothers will give her 2 more days, not to pursue Scylla relentlessly. In that case, they would all be free in 2 days. Lincoln was utterly moved, and facing his mother's words, he nodded without any resistance. After returning to the base, Lincoln ordered no actions to be taken for the next 2 days because his mother would deal with Krantz and had promised to change the way the company operates. But unexpectedly, because Michael escaped from the villa, Krantz, wanting to make Lincoln and the others utterly devoted to working for him, captured Lincoln's girlfriend and son, Mahone's ex-wife Pam, Teabag's mother, and Don's wife, throwing everyone into disarray. Lincoln wanted to find his mother to see if she had any solution, but when he returned to the hotel where they had met, he found it had already closed. Christina also received the news of Lincoln's return, knowing that Lincoln had begun to doubt and that the struggle among the 4 of them for Scylla was inevitable. Christina, weighing her options, did not hesitate to order her son to be killed directly.
Take it.
Take it.
The sniper was just about to pull the trigger when he suddenly realized Lincoln had moved to a position obscured by obstacles. At the same time, Don had already spotted the sniper upstairs. They had been prepared all along. Upon receiving the message, Mahone hurriedly ran upstairs but was ambushed by the sniper right as he arrived. Luckily dodging in time, the sniper fired to suppress and took the chance to flee. However, as soon as he reached the ground floor, Lincoln, who had been waiting, tackled him. At this moment, Lincoln was furious, unable to believe that his mother actually wanted to kill him. The screams of bystanders distracted Lincoln, allowing the sniper to stab him, but the sniper didn't get far before being run over by Teabag, who was driving after them. The group surrounded the sniper, intending to force out Christina's location, but as the sound of police sirens grew closer, they had no choice but to take his phone and quickly leave. Back at the base, Krantz called to inquire who currently had Scylla. Lincoln, still holding on to familial affection, did not tell Krantz that Scylla was in Christina's hands. Krantz doubted Lincoln's capabilities, giving them one last day before angrily hanging up. Time was running out, and without finding Scylla, their loved ones would be killed. Mahone found a number that appeared multiple times in the sniper's call log. Following this number's location, they drove and unexpectedly arrived at the Indian embassy. Descending from the car was Christina, with a bodyguard carrying a box containing Scylla. They planned to sneak in to steal Scylla. The crucial task of diverting the security guard's attention fell on Teabag. Teabag arrived at the embassy entrance demanding to see the President of India. Expressing his dissatisfaction with India's treatment of elephants, he declared, "Elephants are sacred animals and should live freely in the tropical rainforests," even going as far as to handcuff himself to the main gate. In a dramatic gesture, with the embassy's security cameras turning towards them, the others took the opportunity to climb in. As more guards gathered at the gate, Teabag became even more animated, even claiming he would write to the United Nations to complain. After successfully reaching the back door and picking the lock, they quickly informed Teabag to evacuate, but it was too late, as Teabag was just freeing himself from the handcuffs when a group of men in black grabbed him and threw him into a car. "Since you love elephants so much, we'll send you to the zoo to be with your elephant brothers," they told him. At this time, Christina was visiting the son of the President of India, Naveen. Christina opened her laptop to introduce Naveen to all the technologies in Scylla, including solar cells, seawater desalination technology, and how to make crops survive in the desert. Christina proposed that India handle production and sales, while she would be the invisible partner behind the scenes, splitting profits 50-50, and invited Naveen to attend the Global Energy Conference the next day. In front of many world leaders, she planned to announce this technology, fully legitimizing Scylla technology. Naveen was completely persuaded but still had some reservations. A professor named Vincent had published a paper questioning the stability of Scylla technology and highlighting significant safety risks. If Vincent appeared at the energy conference and spoke out, all of India would become a target. Christina assured she would take care of Professor Vincent and gave Naveen only 1 minute to decide. As many countries were eager to obtain Scylla technology, while waiting, an assistant handed Christina a note indicating Vincent would arrive by private jet at 4:30 p.m. After brief consideration, Naveen finally agreed to Christina's plan. After bidding farewell, Christina quickly left. Meanwhile, Lincoln and the others were still searching for her at the embassy, and, unfortunately, they ran into the embassy's bodyguards, thinking they were Christina's subordinates. The bodyguard handed Lincoln a note left on the table by Christina. On the other side, Michael also decoded most of the information on the note and followed it to a parking lot. Michael used an antenna to pick a car lock, and inside the car, he found a briefcase containing a map to the destination, car keys, a cell phone, and a handgun. Michael told Sarah that verses on the note must be initials, and 1630 likely represents 4:30 p.m. Michael drove frantically towards the airport indicated on the map, and at this moment, the cell phone inside the briefcase suddenly rang. As soon as Michael answered, Christina recognized the voice of her younger son and quickly hung up the phone. Little did they expect that the first call between mother and son after more than 20 years would end so abruptly. Meanwhile, Lincoln and the others returned to the base. Upon learning they came back empty-handed except for a note. Teabag was infuriated, exclaiming he got beaten up while they only brought back a piece of paper.
How about some Elmer's glue? Did you get any of that?
But the clever Mahone noticed something crucial. If this person was important to Christina, then he must be equally important to them. So, they rushed to the airport. At this point, Michael had already broken into the airport control center, holding the tower at gunpoint to make Vincent's private jet change its landing runway.
Tancredi, sir, I need you to come with me.
Is there something wrong?
We have some concerns about some health exposure you may have experienced during flight.
I'm sorry, I don't...
Let's go.
Michael Schofield, Vincent Simmons.
Get in the car.
But agents sent by Christina noticed something was amiss and hurried over, managing to block Michael's car with 2 SUVs after a short chase.
Get down! Now!
Now! Put him in the car!
What do we do with these two?
Kill him.
In a critical moment, Mahone arrived and killed the agents with several shots. Now, the brothers stood on opposing sides, with Don stepping forward to take Vincent away. Lincoln told Michael he shouldn't have come here. He did this for the entire family. The first confrontation between the brothers ended with Lincoln's victory, but Michael was far from conceding. Back at the base, Teabag looked at a photo of his mother, who was under house arrest by Krantz, and shed tears in private. After much thought, Teabag once again informed Krantz that Scylla was in the hands of Lincoln's mother.
Fuel the jet. We're going to Miami.
Soon after, Lincoln and the others brought Vincent back to the base, but no matter how they interrogated him, Vincent insisted he didn't know Christina nor what Scylla was, claiming he was just an ordinary professor. However, they couldn't find his cell phone after searching him thoroughly. It turned out Michael had stealthily taken the phone when they got out of the car, and he discovered over 20 emails between Christina and Vincent in Vincent's inbox. It seems this person is far from as simple as they had imagined. Using Vincent's phone, Michael called the company's big boss, who was his biological mother, Christina, demanding she hand over Scylla. But Christina had already traced Michael's location, and soon she arrived with several bodyguards, only to find that Michael was not in the warehouse. Meanwhile, hiding Michael sneaked into their car and stuffed a packet of white powder into the air conditioning vent, then deliberately drove his own car past the warehouse to lure them out. Seeing Michael escaping, the agents hurriedly followed in their car. However, as soon as they started the car, white smoke spewed from the air conditioning, disorienting everyone inside. Before they could exit the vehicle, they had all fainted. Michael approached, knocked down the agents with several punches, then carried his unconscious mother into the trunk. When Christina woke up, she found herself tied to a chair with her son, Michael, sitting opposite her. Michael directly demanded to know where Scylla was hidden, but Christina was not going to easily divulge that information. She attempted to sway Michael with familial affection, but when she realized it had no effect, she tried to drive a wedge between Michael and Lincoln. Only at this moment did Michael learn that Lincoln was not his biological brother. Lincoln's biological parents were also agents of the company and had died on a mission. Michael's father, also an agent, had adopted 3-year-old Lincoln. Christina, however, did not like Lincoln, considering him naturally dull-witted, whereas she had a particular fondness for Michael, who inherited her high intelligence. This indirectly explains why Christina, despite being a high-ranking official in the company, did not appear to save Lincoln in the first season, but Christina underestimated the importance of Lincoln in Michael's heart. Michael had once said, "I will save you," and had jeopardized his future to break his brother out of prison. This deep brotherly bond was not something that could be severed by revealing they were not blood-related. Michael vehemently rebuked Christina, expressing that while she abandoned her children, Lincoln raised and educated him. Even if Lincoln was not his biological brother, he was more than that in spirit. Unable to sow discord between the brothers, Christina tried to distract Michael by claiming Lincoln was walking into a trap she had set. Upon hearing this, Michael became desperate, knowing well the lengths this ruthless woman would go for her interests. Thus, Michael dragged her to the bathroom and forcefully demanded Christina disclose her plans for Lincoln.
Come on! Come here! Ah! Where is he? Where is he? Where is Lincoln?
Christina revealed that Lincoln was proceeding according to her plan toward the energy conference. If you want to save him, you'd better hurry to the hotel where the conference is being held, she said. Although Michael was wary of Christina's mix of truth and lies, he couldn't take the risk of not believing her and decided to head to the hotel alone to stop everything. Before leaving, Michael left a gun with Sarah, instructing her to shoot Christina if she attempted to escape. While Michael was capturing Christina, Lincoln and his group were interrogating Vincent, who stubbornly claimed ignorance about Scylla. Just as Lincoln was about to shoot in frustration, Krantz suddenly arrived.
Put the gun down. Vincent and I need to talk.
Seeing Krantz, Vincent immediately caved. It turned out Vincent had been an agent of the company for 21 years and had now sided with Christina, coming to work for her. Under duress, Vincent admitted he only knew the hotel where Christina was staying, not the whereabouts of Scylla. As they left, Mahone cast a disdainful glance at Teabag, the informant, and Krantz intentionally left Teabag behind, from whose eyes a trace of slight guilt could be discerned. Lincoln and the others arrived at Christina's hotel, only to find it empty. They rummage around and Lincoln inadvertently finds a receipt and Don finds an envelope with the word DMB printed on it. Lincoln had Krantz ask Vincent what DMB meant, and under interrogation, Vincent finally revealed it was a bank. They rushed to the bank and, using Homeland Security credentials, intimidated the bank manager into opening safety deposit box 6468. An employee mentioned that just a minute ago, a man had taken the safety deposit box. They rushed out and saw an agent carrying a case with Scylla in it. They followed doggedly, though the agent seemed to deliberately walk slowly, as if fearing they would lose track of him. Soon, they were lured to the hotel hosting the energy conference. Mahone sensed something was wrong, but the straightforward Lincoln, seeing Scylla within reach, ignored Mahone's caution and followed inside. Mahone discovered a car parked at the entrance that hadn't been turned off. Inside, he found it was rented under Lincoln's name, containing their IDs. Clearly, a conspiracy was at play. Inside the hotel, the energy conference had already started. Naveen, in his capacity as a diplomat, took the stage to speak. Just as he is about to announce the Scylla technology, a sniper from above suddenly kills Naveen. Strangely, after the assassination, the sniper pulled a cartridge case from his pocket. Lincoln happened to follow to this location, and Michael also arrived at the venue, and Christina's shocking conspiracy finally came to light. First, they had surveillance footage of Lincoln at the bank, trying to steal Scylla, creating a narrative. Then, they planted the car rented under his name at the conference entrance to fabricate his escape after committing murder, and the cartridge case left by the sniper had Lincoln's fingerprints, which he had left while searching Christina's room. In other words, Lincoln would once again be accused of assassinating a national figure. But what was Christina's purpose in doing all this? Was it merely because Lincoln was not her biological son? It seemed the situation was far from simple. The grand finale of Prison Break Season 4. In this episode, all the characters we've grown to love find their most fitting destinies. A man wraps his biological mother's limbs with tape. Driven mad, he drags her to the bathroom, where he turns on the scalding hot water to interrogate her about what she really plans for his brother, Lincoln.
Come on! Come in! Ah! Where is he? Where is he? Where's Lincoln?
Upon learning that Lincoln is walking into a trap set by their mother, Michael rushes to the scene to save him. Before leaving, he leaves a gun behind, instructing his girlfriend, Sarah, to shoot Christina if she tries to escape. If you think Michael is ruthless, then you certainly don't know enough about this hard-hearted woman to sell the invaluable Scylla for a higher price. Christina hires an assassin to kill an Indian national leader, framing her other son, Lincoln. By the time Michael arrives at the venue, it's too late. Seeing the police have blocked all exits, the brothers can only hide in a corner. Meanwhile, the highly intelligent Christina won't just surrender, she looks around, trying to find a way out. Minutes later, Sarah, guarding the door, hears Christina's shouts. Unsure of her intentions, Sarah cautiously opens the bathroom door, gun in hand, only to be met with Christina's inexplicable insults, infuriating Sarah, who then slams the door shut. What Sarah doesn't know is that a thin wire pulls down a corner shield, which Christina uses to cut the tape and make noise again to lure Sarah. The moment Sarah opens the door, Christina overpowers her and takes the gun. Christina ties Sarah to a table, intending to shoot her, but a subconscious gesture to protect her belly catches Christina's attention, recognizing that Sarah is pregnant with Michael's child. Christina's remaining shred of conscience prevents her from killing Sarah. After escaping, Christina manipulates the media to report that the brothers took money from Pakistan to plan an international assassination. Krantz, watching on TV, is shocked and sees through Christina's grand scheme, realizing she intends to start a war. The assassination of the Indian leader would prompt India to buy Scylla and seek revenge, leading Russia to strengthen its borders. And within a year, Europe, China, and the USA would all be drawn in. Then Christina could sell Scylla to these warring nations, becoming a global arms dealer. Enraged, Krantz, realizing he's been played by Christina, orders Ralph to rescue Michael and Lincoln, as they know too much about the company and could spill secrets if captured. Krantz, with his extensive connections, manages to get police uniforms and successfully extricates the brothers from the venue. Back at the hotel, disappointed in them, Krantz decides to make an example by randomly choosing one to kill through a draw. Unfortunately, Don is the unlucky one. As Ralph is about to shoot, Don pushes him away and jumps from the high rise. Krantz guesses correctly. Christina is talking with Indian Prime Minister Nandu, whose son was the assassination victim. The son's death drives Nandu to irrationality, planning to use Scylla technology to wage war against Pakistan. Soon after, Nandu hands Christina a check for $750 million, with Christina promising to transfer the Scylla data within 4 hours. Unexpectedly, right after Nandu leaves, Christina instructs Darren to contact Pakistan, suggesting they might also be interested in Scylla. Even Darren is appalled, urging Christina not to proceed.
Reach out to China.
Michael has a good guess of Christina's next move. If Scylla is sold, the money must be collected through an overseas wire transfer, typically taking 3 business days, unless authorized by a Federal Reserve Bank, ensuring immediate effect. Before disappearing completely, Christina would surely withdraw a small amount to confirm the money's arrival, meaning they just need to watch the local Federal Reserve Bank to find Christina. Michael and the 3 of them rush to the bank to find Christina actually withdrawing money from the bank, and next to Darren is the box with Scylla in it. However, as fugitives, the brothers can't show their faces without the guards opening fire immediately.
Then, maybe they shouldn't see our faces.
Everybody down on the ground, now! Nobody move! Nobody gets hurt, you down!
All the banks in Miami, what are the odds?
The trio don masks and rob the bank, seizing Scylla. Before leaving, Lincoln doesn't forget to send a greeting to their mother, and it's this greeting that allows Christina to deduce their identities. Christina immediately orders the bodyguards ambushed at the entrance to act, to cover for Michael's escape. A fierce gunfight ensues, and Lincoln, lagging behind, gets surrounded by agents. Meanwhile, to prevent Michael from keeping Scylla for himself, Krantz has teabagged capture Sarah.
No hands. Thanks to your boyfriend. Now, as I was saying before, I just need your cooperation.
By this time, Michael and Mahone have reached a safe place, and upon opening the case, they find Scylla intact. Just as Michael breathes a sigh of relief, Krantz calls. He's seen the news about the bank and knows Michael has Scylla. Krantz threatens Michael, saying if he doesn't hand over Scylla, he should prepare to collect Sarah's body. But then Christina calls right after hanging up with Krantz.
I have something you want, although I'll never really understand why.
However, Christina is more ruthless. She shoots Lincoln at the edge of his lung.
Looks like you have a little decision to make. Scylla or someone you love.
This becomes the hardest decision Michael has ever had to make: save his lover or his brother. He's plunged into deep despair. In theory, one of them will inevitably become a casualty due to his choice, but the pragmatic Mahone reminds him that Lincoln is about to die from excessive blood loss and suggests saving him first. After all, we have one advantage: neither party knows the other also has a hostage. We can use this time difference to defeat each separately. Following Mahone's advice, Michael immediately calls his mother, arranging a meeting at the container port in half an hour for the exchange. Michael arrives first at the trade location, setting up bombs ready to send his evil mother to the afterlife. Soon, Christina appears with Darren, and Michael sees Lincoln handcuffed in the car. Michael leads his mother to retrieve Scylla, intending to lure Christina into triggering the bomb, but Christina suddenly stops. At this moment, dock workers recognize Michael's fugitive status and immediately call the police. Seeing the police closing in, Christina hastily orders her bodyguard to go and seize Scylla. The moment the bodyguard touches the tripwire, he is instantly killed by the explosion. Christina never imagined her own son would attempt to kill her. An angry Christina curses Lincoln but accidentally reveals Sarah's pregnancy. Meanwhile, Nandu calls, questioning why Scylla hasn't been handed over to him yet. Christina, extremely anxious, threatens Lincoln, saying if Michael doesn't call within 10 minutes, she'll blow his head off. Krantz also calls Michael, asking why Scylla hasn't been delivered yet. If he doesn't see it within an hour, he'll let Teabag have his way with Sarah. After many days, Teabag has once again pulled out his evil trouser pockets. After hanging up, Michael immediately calls Christina to confirm if Lincoln is still alive. To get Scylla, Christina can only hand the phone to Lincoln. Michael asks Lincoln to give any useful information to help rescue him, but Lincoln shakes his head and reveals Sarah's pregnancy, urging Michael to forget about him and save Sarah instead.
Sarah's pregnant.
Hearing this, knowing she's about to lose her leverage, Christina quickly grabs the phone, hangs up, then viciously stabs her high heel into Lincoln's wound.
You asked me how I could just sit and watch my son go into the chair. The answer is simply, you're not my son.
Nandu, having not received Scylla, tells Christina he's returning to India and cancels the deal. Christina pleads for more time, but Nandu refuses to listen and hangs up. Enraged to the point of madness, Christina points a gun at Lincoln, accusing him of ruining her $750 million deal. Just as Christina is about to pull the trigger, Mahone calls. He tells Christina that Michael has taken Scylla to exchange for Sarah, but he proposes a deal. If she can eliminate the man Krantz sent to watch his ex-wife and spare Lincoln's life, he will help her retrieve Scylla. Without a second thought, Christina agrees to the deal, having no better options. Meanwhile, Michael calls Krantz, arranging to exchange Scylla for Sarah in a parking lot in 20 minutes. However, Krantz doesn't plan to bring Sarah, as he never intended to let Michael leave the parking lot alive. But when Krantz arrives, he finds no sign of Michael and discovers the case in the corner is empty. Realizing he's been duped by Michael's diversion, Krantz hurries back to his base. Michael was on his way to rescue Sarah when he climbed up the balcony without the bodyguard noticing. Inside the house, Teabag is eagerly anticipating his next move. Just as he is about to unzip his pants, Michael hits him on the head with a metal rod. Angry Michael wants to kill Teabag, but Sarah stops him, not wanting their unborn child to be the child of a murderer. On the other side, Mahone meets with Christina and hands over Scylla, but Christina wants to verify its authenticity and locks up Mahone, who then sees the injured Lincoln. It turns out Michael and Mahone had planned for Michael to save Sarah and Mahone to save Lincoln. Before handing Scylla over to Mahone, Michael had already removed its core component. When Christina's men find they can't connect Scylla to a computer, they're unaware it's been rigged with a timed bomb. Mahone plans to detonate it, but at the crucial moment, the remote control fails. Christina enters the room demanding to know why the Scylla data won't open. Mahone, feigning innocence, manually activates the bomb while they're distracted. He suddenly stands, knocks down Darren with 2 punches, kicks Christina to the ground, and rushes into the room. Seeing the situation turn dire, Christina grabs Darren, using him as a human shield. Michael successfully rescues his girlfriend Sarah and his brother Lincoln and secures Scylla, which all factions are after. Krantz, having lost everything, flies into a rage, blaming Teabag for everything, accusing him of failing to even handle the delicate Sarah. Just as Krantz is about to shoot Teabag, Sarah's forgotten phone on the table suddenly rings. Knowing this is his only chance to live, Teabag quickly answers the call. To his surprise, the caller is Sucre, whom he hasn't seen in a long time. Sucre wants to know Michael's whereabouts. Teabag lies that they have been captured and says they might be overheard on the phone, so he arranges a face-to-face meeting with Sucre. After hanging up, Teabag turns to Krantz and tells him that capturing Sucre, Michael's close friend, would surely draw out Michael. Under the watch of bodyguards, Teabag meets Sucre at the agreed location. Teabag doesn't beat around the bush and tells Sucre to wisely come with him. He points to the upper left corner, claiming the company's top assassin sitting behind could blow his head off at any moment. However, before Teabag can finish, the top assassin is already dead.
What's up, Jethro?
Teabag turned around and realized that the man pointing the gun at him was Benjamin from the Fox River State Penitentiary. But how did Benjamin and Sucre come to be together? After bidding farewell to Lincoln, Sucre has been living a life on the run with Mary Cruz, always on edge. One day, he runs into an old acquaintance on the street. Benjamin swears he's there to help them clear their names, having recently met a mysterious figure who can wipe their criminal records clean if Scylla is handed over. This person promises to use Scylla's technology for the benefit of humanity, allowing them to live like normal people. Sucre is skeptical until he meets the person and finally believes Benjamin's words. Benjamin, finding Sarah's phone on Teabag, immediately sends Michael's number to the mysterious person. On the other side, Michael and his group, dragging the severely injured Lincoln, hide in an abandoned warehouse. Now they are not only wanted criminals but also hunted by both Krantz and Christina. But even so, Michael is determined to destroy Scylla, the root of all evil. But then a phone call comes in.
Hello, Michael. You're a tough man to get a hold of.
It turns out the mystery man is none other than Agent Paul, who died 2 seasons ago. Paul reveals he was saved by Michael's father's organization and has since worked with them. There's a United Nations commissioner arriving in Miami at 5 o'clock. They've cooperated with the UN, promising to clear all their charges if Scylla is handed over, and Paul promises to use Scylla's technology for the good of humanity. Doubtful after being deceived many times, Michael doesn't know whether to trust Paul, especially since Paul has hunted him multiple times. As Lincoln's gunshot wound worsens and he's at risk of bleeding to death without proper treatment, the group rushes him to the hospital. Sarah, not a fugitive, sneaks in to steal surgical equipment but is caught when Krantz's bodyguard smashes the car window. Ralph, using Michael's phone location, finds them, and they're brought before Krantz again. On the TV screen is Lincoln's girlfriend, Sophia. Krantz threatens Michael, saying if Scylla isn't handed over within half an hour, Sophia will become a corpse. But Krantz doesn't know that 2 people have already infiltrated the room unnoticed.
Don't move. All right.
Sucre and Benjamin, having pressured Teabag for information, find the location. Michael also threatens Krantz to call and release Sophia. Seeing Sophia leave on the screen, Michael intends to kill Krantz, the source of everyone's misery, but Sucre stops him. He reminds Michael that he came to rescue him not for revenge but to clear their names and regain their innocence. Eventually, they tie Krantz to the railing. As the sound of approaching police sirens grows louder, the group, dragging a barely alive Lincoln, hurriedly departs. Seeing the police cars catching up, Sucre once again steps up, driving another vehicle to block the passage, buying time for Michael and the others to escape.
Go, go!
Now, with Sucre captured and Lincoln critically injured and on the brink of death, Michael has no choice but to place all his hope on Paul. But Paul's phone goes unanswered. Lincoln reminds Michael to turn off his phone, as Krantz had just located them through the phone's GPS. However, before Lincoln could finish, Christina, along with her henchman, arrives. After a bout of gunfire, Christina, holding a gun, searches and finds Scylla hidden in a cabinet. As Christina prepares to leave, Michael suddenly stands, threatening his mother to drop Scylla and her weapon. Christina was convinced that Michael wouldn't kill his own mother, but to her utter surprise, Michael, filled with deep-seated hatred for her, actually pulled the trigger. Unfortunately, the gun was empty of bullets. At the critical moment, Sarah shoots Christina from behind, ending her life. Christina's bullet also hits Michael in the shoulder. Needing to hand over Scylla to Paul before 5 o'clock and without seeking treatment, Michael rushes to the meeting point. On the way, He looks to the right and to the left, and any sign of movement makes Michael wary. As he neared his destination, two men stopped Michael. Once brought to an office, Michael finally meets Paul and the UN commissioner, handing over Scylla. When connected to a computer, it seems a component is missing. Even at this moment, Michael still harbors doubts about Paul. Because Scylla carries the lives and freedom of many people, he would not easily hand it over to someone he is still not very familiar with. After much persuasion from Paul, Michael, trembling, installs the blood-stained component into Scylla.
I'll make the call. You did it. It's over.
This gamble finally pays off. Soon, Paul gathers all of Michael's old friends from the prison break gang, and they sign immunity agreements. All hostages held by the company are freed. Countless days and nights of struggle and escape coalesced into this moment of bitterness and emotion. They embraced each other and cried. This time they were finally completely free. Paul tells the group that Teabag, also claiming to have helped find Scylla, requests immunity. Paul did not explicitly agree to Teabag's request for immunity. Instead, he left the decision to the prison break gang through a vote.
We took a vote. You're in luck.
Like a day.
What we voted on was whether or not you took a stick of gum on the van ride back.
Ultimately, without any surprise, Teabag was unanimously voted back into Fox River State Penitentiary by everyone. With matters finally settled, Michael and Sarah walk along the beach, contemplating the future. However, Sarah's smile freezes as Michael's nosebleed returns, signaling his cancer's resurgence. They embrace tightly, not daring to think further. Time flies, and 4 years pass. Mahone and his former colleague Felicia have settled down together. Lincoln and his girlfriend Sophia open a surf shop by the beach, their only concern now being LJ's education. Sucre and Benjamin each enjoy a happy family life. Paul brought down the company and became a rising star in politics. Don, having jumped into a river to escape, ends up in a vegetative state. Krantz, for his heinous crimes, finally faces the electric chair that Lincoln nearly sat in. Teabag is once again the boss of the Fox River State Penitentiary, and he's still surrounded by a little heel who pulls on his pockets.
But lay it on me.
On a beach bathed in the sunset's afterglow, several graves stand solemnly. Sarah, along with the child she shared with Michael and a few old friends from the prison break gang, gathers here, paying their respects at Michael's tombstone. To Lincoln, he was a fiercely loyal and passionate family member. To Sucre, a brother in arms, sharing a bond stronger than blood. To Mahone, a friend with whom he shared deep mutual respect. And to Sarah and their child, he was the husband and father who bore the world on his shoulders, giving his all. The story of Prison Break Season 4 also came to a perfect conclusion amidst everyone's relief. A beach wedding with only 5 attendees somehow fills countless fans with joy for the couple. From their initial meeting to the flutter of heartbeats that followed, they braved numerous hardships and finally regained their freedom. Under the witness of a priest and their close friends and family, Michael and Sarah rightfully became husband and wife. Just as they were basking in the joy of their wedding, several police cars suddenly appeared. The arriving officers, ignoring pleas from the crowd, produced an arrest warrant and forcibly took the bride away. It turned out that, weeks earlier, Sarah had shot and killed Christina to save Michael, an act that was unfortunately captured on surveillance footage. Since Christina's secretive work was impeccably covered, proving her employment by the company was impossible. Hence, Christina's legal team clung to the evidence, determined to tear the newlyweds apart. Under pressure, Paul's side had no choice but to compromise. Hearing Sarah could be sentenced to 25 years ignited an impulsive urge in Michael to break her out. Upon her arrival at the prison, Sarah immediately caught the attention of some troublemakers. But before they could act, the guards intervened. One guard kindly offered Sarah a single cell, claiming it to be safer. Naive Sarah followed, only to realize something was amiss upon arrival. Soon, several guards surrounded her, having been forewarned about Sarah, because Sarah had left a door open in the first season, aiding the escape of an 8-person group from Fox River State Penitentiary. Half of the prison guards lost their jobs. Thus, they planned to intimidate Sarah first to prevent any incidents during her stay. Pregnant Sarah fought back, fearing for her unborn child. Thankfully, they had the decency not to target her abdomen. After Sarah emerged battered, a woman with glasses approached her. She was the prison's leader, Known among inmates as Daddy, Daddy's followers were part of a family she had formed. Seeing Sarah as talented, she wanted to recruit her to serve her purposes, but Sarah firmly refused. However, all of this was observed by someone on the second floor, Gretchen, who had been previously wounded by a gunshot. Meanwhile, in the adjacent men's prison, Teabag was mingling with Krantz. Krantz reads in the newspaper that Sarah is being held in a women's prison, and in order to get back at Michael for what he did to him, Krantz decides to buy Sarah's life with the only $100,000 he has left in legal fees. Thus, Krantz tasked his lawyer Joe with the job. The bounty notice eventually reached Gretchen, who eyed the tempting reward and then the prey below. Beginning to formulate a plan, during mealtime, Gretchen warned Sarah not to sit with Skitlas, saving her a spot across the table. Before they could exchange a few words, Sarah felt poisoned by her food. As an internal medicine doctor, she knew she needed treatment quickly to save her unborn child. But the guards are deliberately making it difficult for Sarah to go to the infirmary for treatment. The overbearing Daddy came over to speak up for Sarah, allowing her to receive timely treatment. Thankfully, the child was also safe and sound. When the doctor inquired about her injuries, Sarah, not wanting to cause trouble, claimed it was an accident. The detective handling Sarah's case informed Michael, who immediately knew who was responsible. Michael promptly visited Krantz in the men's prison, pleading with him not to harm Sarah and their child, saying he could come at him instead, but Krantz made his stance clear.
If you were killed, your pain would last a moment. If Sarah were killed, your pain would last the rest of your life.
Hearing Krantz say this, Michael knew there was no point in further discussion. He hurried to find the warden, Alice, to request a transfer to another prison for Sarah. But Alice, having long heard of Michael's reputation, stated she wouldn't let this prison become another Fox River State Penitentiary and promised that Sarah would be treated fairly. At that moment, Michael's nose bled again. As Alice went to get him a tissue, he instinctively looked out the window, trying to spot any vulnerabilities in the prison. Michael returned and informed Lincoln and Sucre, deciding to start planning Sarah's rescue. Through Michael's investigations, he learned that in the past 60 years, there had been 7 escape attempts from this prison, all ending in failure. To ensure success, Michael arranged for Lincoln and Sucre to gather information near the prison while he distracted the federal agent Todd monitoring them. Todd was the one who took Sarah away at the wedding. He told Michael his job was to ensure Sarah stayed in prison. Todd has been keeping an eye on Michael to prevent him from attempting a prison break. Meanwhile, in the prison, Sarah was taken by a guard to a deserted corridor. Daddy once again offered her an olive branch, suggesting she take a job as an auto mechanic, which would be much safer than her current situation. Sarah accepted Daddy's offer. Daddy's overprotectiveness of Sarah caused jealousy in her wife and discontent among other family members, but Daddy quelled these disturbances. Daddy once again invited Sarah to join her family, but Sarah politely declined. While dumping waste oil, Sarah suddenly spotted Lincoln outside the prison. Her instincts told her Michael must be planning her escape. Just as Sarah was about to return, Gretchen stopped her. Gretchen had also seen Lincoln outside the prison and pressed Sarah for his intentions. Before Gretchen could get an answer, Daddy came out. Even though Gretchen is a tough cookie, she's still staying away from Daddy here. To escape Gretchen's harassment, Sarah decided to join Daddy's family. Daddy asked her men to take out a snake necklace, which is the badge of their family. Each member will be branded with loyalty. On the other hand, Mahone, now a free man, applied for reinstatement, but only Felicia voted in favor. Seeing this, Mahone got up to leave. Suddenly, the leader called Mahone back, stating if he could monitor Michael, provide crucial information, and prevent the imprisoned Sarah from escaping, he could be reinstated. Faced with the condition of betraying his friend, the Honorable Mahone was unmoved. Then, the leader threw a detective badge on the table. Would Mahone be swayed by the sight of what he had longed for? Mahone quickly sought out Michael and his team, saying if he could monitor them, they agreed to reinstate him. Mahone was truly honest, even advising Michael to act quickly and offering his help if needed. With the measurements of the prison and Sarah's work schedule and location provided by Lincoln and others, Michael quickly identified a vulnerability in the prison, due to the prison walls being widened during renovations and the camera positions remaining unchanged. The clever Mahone immediately understood Michael's plan. He intended for Sarah to use the blind spots of the cameras to reach a specified location, then they would breach the outer wall to successfully rescue Sarah. The next step was to inform Sarah of the time and place. Since Sarah was a high-priority inmate, the prison did not allow visits or phone calls. Just as everyone was puzzled, Michael pulled out a piece of paper. The scene shifts. and a letter filled with text is delivered into Alice's hands. After carefully verifying its contents, she orders her subordinates to pass it to Sarah. Upon reading the letter, Sarah instantly understands Michael's intentions. Relying on their years of unspoken understanding, Sarah folds the letter into the shape of the paper flower Michael once gave her, indicating a meeting at the waste oil tank tomorrow at 7 p.m. On Gretchen's end, to deal with Sarah's protector Daddy, Gretchen bribes the guards to frame Daddy with contraband found in her room, leading to Daddy's inevitable solitary confinement. At this moment, Gretchen reveals a sinister smirk from the second floor. Michael, meanwhile, receives a call from his lawyer, who has managed to secure a visiting opportunity for him to see Sarah. Rushing to the prison, seeing his beautiful wife battered hurts him more than if the blows were landed on him. During their conversation, Michael confirms Sarah has received his letter, greatly increasing the likelihood of their plan's success. Time with a loved one always feels too short. Watching Sarah's departing figure, Michael vows to rescue her. However, just as Michael is about to leave the prison, he suddenly notices the security blind spot he found being repaired, leaving him dumbfounded. The carefully thought-out escape plan is thus thwarted, but to rescue his pregnant wife Sarah, Michael has no choice but to plan another escape. After discussing with the others, Michael decides to enter the prison via parachute, but he needs someone's help. That someone is T-Bag from the neighboring men's prison. Michael arranges for Lincoln to negotiate with T-Bag, who only needs to press the fire alarm at 7:30 p.m. the next night to easily earn $5,000. However, the greedy T-Bag scoffs at the amount, demanding a six-figure sum. At that time, Lincoln and the others simply don't have that kind of money, but the cunning T-Bag has a way to make it. T-Bag quietly tells Lincoln that the money Krantz offered for killing Sarah is with his proxy lawyer, Joe. The rest is up to you. Transfer the money into my account before 7 p.m. tomorrow, and I'll pull the alarm for you, T-Bag says, then struts off. Because Gretchen bribed the guards to frame Daddy, leading to her solitary confinement, Sarah loses her protector. Gretchen finds Sarah again, forcing her to plan an escape together or else no one gets out. Having discovered the note Michael gave to Sarah, the lure of Krantz's bounty is tempting, but what is money compared to freedom? Meanwhile, Michael has already planned the detailed escape scheme, which he shares with Lincoln and Sucre. He will first land on the perimeter of the prison, then sneak into the chapel, as it is the only building connected to the administration building. During a riot, the guards will flee through the emergency exit of the administration building. There's a secret exit in that enclosure, which is where Lincoln and the others will rendezvous. Just then, Mahone returns from outside. Michael asks Mahone to find a small plane and instructs Lincoln and the others to secure Krantz's substantial funds, ensuring everyone's tasks are arranged before 7 p.m. Michael immediately visits Sarah, as there's a change in plans, and he needs to inform Sarah of his new plan, telling her to wait for him in the chapel. However, their conversation is undoubtedly being monitored. Michael can't speak openly and must use coded language to pass the message to Sarah, but the agents and Alice outside the glass can't understand a word they're saying.
Pray for us tonight.
Pray for us.
You can pray for us to be together.
Meanwhile, Lincoln also heads to the men's prison to find T-Bag, needing his help to quickly locate Krantz's bounty. He seeks T-Bag's assistance in gathering useful information. T-Bag, eager to secure the substantial sum, devises a plan. He scribbles a note and then approaches Krantz. Krantz, thinking someone has already taken care of Sarah and is coming to claim the bounty, writes down Joe's phone number. T-Bag got the number with a sly grin on his face and passed it on to Lincoln. Tracking someone down becomes much easier with a phone number. Soon enough, Sucre finds Joe's home. After confirming his identity, Sucre employs his lockpicking skills, proving that locks are merely a formality to him. Joe, terrified, grabs his cash box and tries to flee, but as soon as he gets into his car, Lincoln, who has been waiting, catches him. When Krantz realizes he's been duped, T-Bag, gloating, comes to boast. Meanwhile,
I just thought I'd let you know I came into some green.
Mahone has made contact with a plane. Mahone can't help but be curious when he sees Michael working on cards and stuff.
See, the prison was built in the mid-'80s. Those locks don't have power protection. A 1200-volt power surge will just set off the other alarms.
Mahone realizes that Michael is prepared for the worst in his effort to save Sarah. Just then, his phone rings in his pocket. It's a call from Todd. Unbelievably, Mahone, hoping for a smooth reinstatement, had snitched about the security blind spot to Todd, allowing him to timely repair the prison's vulnerabilities. When Mahone brings up the matter of his reinstatement, Todd surprisingly demands that Mahone find evidence to arrest Michael before he can agree to reinstate him. Seeing through their despicable nature, Mahone doesn't provide crucial information this time. Mahone introduces Michael to the pilot and advises him to consider other methods as parachuting is too risky. But Michael, aware of his deteriorating condition and Sarah's imminent danger, sees no other option. He then pulls out a CD and an envelope, asking Mahone to help him get Lincoln and Sarah out of the country. Showing immense trust in the current Mahone, Mahone takes Michael to buy parachuting gear. Touched by Michael's trust, Mahone halts him, suggesting he has a better idea. Meanwhile, in the prison, inmates greedily eye Sarah, still coveting the $100,000 bounty. Daddy's subordinates make the first move, but the highly skilled Gretchen appears and quickly knocks them out. Upon hearing her family member has been killed, Daddy vows revenge once she's out. Gretchen took out the pendant with her daughter's name on it and said she went out for her daughter. Seeing Gretchen's past help and considering her own impending motherhood, Sarah decides to escape with Gretchen. After all, she needs Gretchen's help as Daddy's people are already eyeing her. At dinner time, Sarah and Gretchen prepare to act, but unfortunately, Daddy, who had been in solitary, is released. The two quietly plan for Gretchen to take care of the guards while Sarah deals with Daddy and her crew. Sarah doesn't go to fight but explains to Daddy she acted in self-defense, which Daddy refuses to listen to. Sarah pushes Daddy into Skitlas, revealing Skitlas as the real boss of the prison, instantly deflating the usually dominant Daddy. In the chaos, Gretchen attacks the guards, quickly taking them down but getting stabbed in the process. Then Gretchen knocks a guard unconscious, and Sarah seizes the moment to take the keys. Meanwhile, Michael and his team have arrived at the airport. Mahone deliberately calls Todd, saying Michael is planning to parachute onto the prison yard. Hearing this, Todd immediately informs Alice and arranges for all guards to ambush the yard and turn off all lights. Waiting for Michael's arrival, Todd arrived at the playground in time, but he didn't realize that he had been set up. As soon as Michael lands, the guards immediately attack, but upon inspection, they discover it's just a dummy. Michael had already taken the opportunity to hide under a car and then sneak into the church. By this time, Sarah and Gretchen had quietly arrived at the church door. As Sarah is finding the keys to open the door, Gretchen suddenly gets spotted by a guard. When asked if there were any accomplices, Gretchen doesn't betray Sarah. Sarah has already sneaked into the church by then, and after the guards take Gretchen away, Sarah quietly picks up the pendant Gretchen intended for her daughter. Just then, Michael appears, and without time for words, they hurry off. Mahone and Lincoln are waiting outside for them, while Sucre rushes to the bank to transfer money, only to find it closed. Teabag sees that the time has come and calls to check his account balance, but there is no change in the balance after checking several times. Michael and Sarah reach the emergency exit of the administration building, everything ready except for Teabag's role. Not receiving the money, Teabag doesn't hesitate to betray Michael, claiming he was asked to sound the fire alarm for an escape. Hearing this, Todd orders the prison's fire alarm system shut down, which is exactly what Michael wanted, exploiting Teabag's tendency to snitch rather than the alarm itself. Michael puts his musket to the lock and opens the door without any problems. Continuing as planned, they reach the last door. Michael tries an electronic card, but it fails. Fortunately, Michael has one last trick, cutting off the building's power supply for a few seconds before forcefully reconnecting it. The strong electric current can break the electronic lock. Sarah must take this opportunity to escape, but reconnecting the power could cause an explosion, putting the person doing so at great risk. Despite Sarah's pleas, they have no other choice. Michael caresses his child, and after a brief kiss, Sarah leaves with tears in her eyes. Unable to bear parting, Michael pulls down the cable and reconnects it. A strong electric current runs through his hands and sparks fly. The last door opens smoothly, and Sarah looks back reluctantly, then runs outside with tears streaming down her face. Lincoln asked her where Michael had gone and Sarah didn't know how to answer. At this time Lincoln had a bad feeling. He looked at the door of the prison how much he hoped that a miracle would happen. Only Mahone knows Michael's plan. Mahone urges Lincoln that it's not wise to linger, and reluctantly, the group gets into the car and leaves. Teabag, outsmarted, not only misses the $100,000 but also gets thrown into solitary as an accomplice for conveying wrong information. Outsmarted by Michael again. On the way back, everyone is silent. Mahone hands Sarah the items Michael left behind. A medical report shows Michael's tumor had worsened. At the docks, Sucre gives Sarah the money from Kranz's bounty. After bidding farewell, Sarah and Lincoln board a yacht to leave the country. They watch a video Michael left, his final goodbye to them.
Well,
Well, if you're watching this, I'm glad. And that's all I ever wanted. Because it means you're safe. And Link, I want you to promise me, no matter what, they're gonna grow up knowing their uncle is never far away. So now, plainly, simply, I want to say that I love you both. We're free.